everyone. Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel, Reading with the Crew, all about Brendan Dassey, Doc and Neverly.
Thank you so much, Jack61. It's great to be here, and a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Silkman. I'm from the Foul Play team, and I'm from Adelaide, South Australia. At the moment, it's a nice chilly 5 degrees Celsius. We're in the middle of winter at the moment. So I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you so much. And before we start the podcast, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. We'll have more people joining on a little bit later, but I'd like to welcome Jack61. Jack61, how are you coming along, good sir?
No, doing very well. I want to welcome everyone in the live chat. Thanks for coming. This is a really great, in-depth, probably the deepest dive we've ever done at Foul Play for Brendan, from beginning to end, as much as we know.
Yeah.
So bring your questions, bring your thoughts, your comments, put them in the live chat, and let's talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack61. Next, we have Neverly. Neverly, how are you coming along? Is it slightly warmer than 5 degrees Celsius in California?
Oh my, yes, it's actually 29 Celsius or 84 Fahrenheit. Hello, Dr. Silkman. Happy birthday, American time.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Silkman's birthday yesterday in his country. So everybody wish you, there's like an outpour of well-wishers in this
Thank you so much, everyone.
And you deserve it. Yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day. The summer has arrived. And it's actually nice. I can't complain too much. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And yes, yesterday was my birthday. And I'm 21 times 3. So I'm a Gemini.
I will be too in a couple of months.
Hey, it's a privilege.
Awesome. No, it's fantastic. And, yesterday my family asked me, what would you like for your birthday present? And I thought about it, and, I've got a lot of stuff and I'm pretty happy and content. And I thought, I love to see Brendan be free. That's it. Just be Brendan to be released so he can be with his mum, his dad, and his brothers. That's the best birthday present that I can definitely have. And So again, guys, welcome everyone. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be continuing our new Reading with the Crew series. This is episode number 2. And again, guys, because of the content that we're covering, please, viewer discretion is advised. We're not going to put up all the warnings. We did that last time. So what we're going to do, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to make a start immediately. Now, this new series, as Jack61 alluded to, is going to be on a deep dive on Brendan Dassey. And so what we're going to do is we're going to continue the series. We're going to try and do shorter podcasts, mainly because of the basis of the material that we're covering. So Jack61, unless there are any comments, let's make a start. Let's start with slide number 1. So as you know, guys, before I introduce this slide, this is episode number 2 of the Reading with the Crew series.
Sorry about that, Doc.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so this is episode number 2, entitled The Entrapment of Brendan Dassey. And so there are certain things topics that we're going to cover today. So as you know, last week, we talked about the interrogation of Brendan Dassey at Crivets that took place by Detective O'Neill and Baldwin, and the fact that Brendan Dassey had changed his narrative several times. Now, in today's podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at another interrogation, guys. Something that often is not spoken about, but is actually very, very important. And that's the interrogation of Brendan Dassey that took place at Crivets by Skorlinski and Baldwin. This was a game changer for Brendan Dassey, and we'll talk about that. The next topic that we'll be discussing is what Brendan's cousin, Kayla Avery, told her school counselor right? What she spoke to her school counselor about, what her concerns were about her cousin, Brendan Dassey. And we'll be discussing the impact that this had on Brendan. And it was huge, okay? Huge. The spotlight now was firmly placed on Brendan. It's very, very interesting on what transpired. Next, it's an area that we must get into, and that is the steps of the Reid technique. Before we talk about the interrogation of Brendan by both Fassbender and Wiggett, he had already been interrogated using the Reid technique. Of course, Brendan was not aware of this. So we're going to look at the steps involved in the Reid technique and how it can lead to a false confession in someone like a child like Brendan Dassey, especially someone who's got developmental issues. Now, regrettably, as you'll see, guys, what happened to Brendan is not unique. It's happened to thousands of people prior to Brendan and will happen to thousands of people after Brendan. So we need to have a look at the Reid technique and what's it all about. Break it down. Then we're going to have a look at how Mr. Kratz, during Brendan Dassey's trial, told the jury that only guilty people would confess to a crime, right? And it's interesting that Mr. Kratz never once mentions the Reid technique, and the fallacies and the issues with the Reid technique never mentions them at all. And finally, guys, hopefully at the end of the podcast, we'll answer your questions. So please, as Jack61 said, if you do have a question, please place a Q in front, and we'll try and answer your questions towards the end. Again, guys, thank you very much for all your support. We read all your comments, we get all your feedback, and Neverly and myself, and both Jack61 and the Foul Play team, want to thank you so much for your support with the Reading with the Crew series. It's been really well received, no matter what platform it's been on, which has been awesome. All right, so on our very first slide, last week, there was mentioning of specific articles that we have referred to, and two really important articles to understand what actually happened to Brendan Dassey and also other people as well. One of them is entitled Under the Hood, Brendan Dassey, Language Impairments and Judicial Ignorance by Michelle Lavigne and Sally Miles. A really, really good article. And we refer to a lot of this particular article. And guys, you can see the link down below where the red arrow is. It's available for free. It's on the internet. Whenever you got a spare hour or so, check it out. It's very, very important. And the other journal article is entitled The Interrogations of Brendan Dassey. Again, this is a really good launching pad if you want to get into an investigation of the techniques used against Brendan Dassey. And that's called The Interrogations of Brendan Dassey by Brian Galini. Definitely worth checking out. And that's available online as well. So these are really good references to understand what occurred to Brendan. All right, Jack61, if we have the next slide, please. And there are two books. You can either get them as ebooks or as hardcover, and I thoroughly recommend them. If you're really interested in this type of area, false confessions, these two books are really highly recommended. One of them is called You Have the Right to Remain Innocent by James Duane, a really, really good book. Covers a lot of different topics, not only about Brendan Dassey, but many other topics that can elicit false confessions, especially in the youth, especially in the vulnerable individuals. Could be your son, could be your daughter, could be yourself, right? You'll be very, very surprised. And the other one that I thoroughly recommend is entitled Blind Injustice.
What a great book.
Yeah, that really is a good book. And this gentleman here, Neverly, do you have a comment?
I'm sorry. That sounds so familiar. Have we read this book?
Yeah, we've gone, and I
Okay.
think Mark Godsey has done quite a few podcasts. Is that right, Jaxie?
Yes. Now I
Yeah,
remember.
but
Thank you, Dr.
I got
Silkman.
the ebook. I got the ebook, and we shared it. We listened as a group.
Yeah,
Many of us did.
yeah, yeah. So it definitely worthwhile checking out this book, Blind Injustice. And this gentleman, Mark, he was a prosecutor, and then he went to a defense counselor on the defense side. And what he has to write is actually quite shocking. And he does mention Brendan Dassey in a lot of cases. So these two references, as a general guide, they're excellent ebooks. All right, Jack 61, if we have the next slide, please. So what I've noticed is that we're getting new people coming onto the case all the time, which is awesome. It's fantastic that your questions, and also it's important to have a fresh set of eyes on this particular case. And so this location here is absolutely crucial. And you're going to see it being referred to a lot, especially in Brendan Dassey's interrogations. And this is a photograph showing Stephen Avery's trailer towards the back. In the mid-ground, you see Stephen Avery's garage. And to the left-hand side, you see Stephen Avery's infamous burn pit. These three areas are very, very important. So you know the general location of them, because they're going to come up a lot, especially in the interrogations of Brendan Dassey. There's also another very important character per se, and that's shown with the yellow arrow, and that's Bear. And this is Stephen Avery's German Shepherd, who was around when the investigators were on scene. And Bear, if only Bear could talk, right, guys? If only Bear could talk, he was a very, very important witness, a witness to what occurred when Teresa Horbach arrived. So, yeah. So please be familiar with the layout of both the trailer, the garage, and the burn pit. Jack 61, if we have the next slide, please. I like this picture. It shows an aerial view of how the trailers are located. And on the right-hand side is Stephen Avery's trailer, the garage, and at the back is Stephen Avery's burn pit. And also to the left-hand side, you can see Barb Yunder's residence. And that's where Brendan Dassey was, okay? But one thing that strikes you immediately is how everything is out in the open, okay? There's nothing hidden behind fences or high walls. Everything's out in the open. And in the foreground, you can see Barb Yunder's minivan. That's the minivan that Teresa Horbach arrived on October the 31st to take photographs of. So now that you've orientated yourself, it's very important so you know what Brendan is talking about during his interrogations. All right, guys, do we have any questions so far? We're all good?
No, looks like we're all good, Doc.
We're all good. Okay, and welcome. Welcome who's joined us so far. So Jack 61, let's have a look at the very first slide. So in essence, what we're doing now is we're setting the scene. What happened to Brendan? You've got to realize, guys, he's 16 years old. He's intellectually challenged. He has no guardian, no adult guardian with him. He's got no attorney. He's by himself. As you know, on November the 6th, that's when O'Neill and Baldwin had interviewed Brendan Dassey. In actual fact, it was an interrogation. Brendan Dassey, during that interrogation session, basically admitted that he saw Teresa Horbach, her RAV4, and Stephen Avery on October the 31st. Now remember, at that stage, November the 6th, the only thing that had been found was Teresa's RAV4 on the Avery salvage yard. Teresa Horbach was still considered a missing person at that stage. The tragedy for Brendan is that he changed his narrative, right, guys? He changed his narrative twice, all based on what the bus driver said. Right, guys? Do we have any comments?
That's exactly what happened. And they, well, Skorlinski and Deb Strauss, I think, were right there nearby O'Neill and Baldwin. And, we don't know what all was said.
Yep.
Whatever's in the report. But without knowing exactly, it's only speculation on my part, maybe everyone else, of what they were actually doing and what they were trying to do to get this, well, a statement. That's what the Reid technique's all about. Is getting a statement in
Correct.
place of having actual freaking evidence, right?
Correct. 100% correct. It's actually quite horrifying when you think about it, right? So now, based on what Brendan Dassey said to O'Neill and Baldwin, Skorlinski and Baldwin wanted to talk to Brendan Dassey again, right? So Brendan again was interrogated at Crivets. They wanted to ask Brendan Dassey follow-up questions to Brendan about what he saw, what he knows. Because remember, he associated himself with Teresa Horbach, her RAV4, and Stephen Avery on October the 31st. Guys, we have the benefit of hindsight. We know that never occurred. There's no way that Brendan could have seen Teresa, her RAV4, and Stephen Avery on October the 31st, the moment he got off the bus at 3:45.
No way.
The bus driver had made a mistake. Brendan Dassey simply changed his narrative to comply, but it had a disastrous consequence for Brendan, right? Now, notice the date, November the 10th. Brendan Dassey was at Crivets, right? Still at Crivets. The families were not permitted to come back on their properties, right? So they were still at Crivets. A couple of very important events occurred. On November the 9th, Brendan Dassey's uncle, Stephen Avery, he was arrested for felony in possession of a weapon. So he was basically placed in prison, removed off the streets, so to speak. That's exactly what Kratz said.
Which halted the depositions, by the way.
Yes, it did. It did. Tom Kacerik was due to give a deposition on November the 10th. So everything came to a crashing halt. So now you have Skorlinski and Baldwin that wanted to re-question Brendan because he sent up, as you can see on the picture, a red flag. So unbeknownst to Brendan, who was only 16, a trap had actually been set for Brendan. Now the question is, what did Skorlinski know and Baldwin know that Brendan obviously didn't? So what had occurred between November the 6th to November the 10th, right? And that's absolutely crucial. And Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide. So guys, put it in your mind. A trap was now being set. Jack 61.
I just want to add this for context as well, because we know what happened besides Stephen getting arrested on the 9th is that all of them on the Avery salvage yard were hauled down to Aurora Medical Center. Their palm fingerprints were taken and a buccal swab, except for Brendan and Blaine. They weren't. None of that happened. So
correct.
This has to be. I mean, in my mind, I never used to consider this end of it, but I do now, and I have for quite some time.
Yep. So put yourself in Brendan's shoes. You now have got two very, very high-powered investigators who are now going to question you. So, as you can see, we want to know, well, what actually transpired between November the 6th and November the 10th? If you have a look at the search warrant, Neverly, do you see the slide?
Yes, I do, Dr. Silkman.
Something very important was found. Would you like to read it out?
Sure. Complaint is informed that on November 8, 2005, while continuing to execute the search warrant of the property located near the residence of Stephen Avery, located at 12932 Avery Road in the town of Gibson, Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, officers located bone fragments and teeth in a fire pit area located approximately 20 yards south of a detached garage that is located next to the residence of Stephen Avery. Officers also located remnants of steel belts of tires that appear to have been utilized as fire accelerants. The bone fragments located were transported by Dorinda Frey Miller, a special agent with the Division of Criminal Investigations, to Ken Bennett, a retired forensic anthropologist, who identified the bones as being human in nature. Bennett also determined that based on the characteristics of the ilium bone, which is our hip bone, the bones are from an adult human female.
Okay.
I have a question. Pick me.
Go for it, Neverly.
Okay, Dr. Silkman, forgive me if you could
not
refresh our memory regarding Ken Bennett. How did he determine that these are human bones?
Right. So he's a retired forensic anthropologist, many years of experience. So he has to have the ability to determine the difference between an animal bone and a human bone.
The honeycombing and stuff, or did he use like a microscope?
No. He did observation. Oh. Now, if you have a lot of experience at looking at bones, one of your tasks as a forensic anthropologist is to distinguish between an animal bone and a human bone. There are physiological and anatomical differences between the bones. Essentially, by looking at if the bones have been broken or cut in any way to expose the internal structure, someone who's got experience at looking at bone fragments can determine whether they're animal or human. Furthermore, the hip bone in a female has got a certain shape, certain angle, and certain morphology, right?
Yes, and it's different than the male hip.
Correct.
Pelvic bone.
The pelvic bone in a female and a male are very different. There's a different angle, there's a different shape, different size, everything. So Bennett was able to look at the cremains, the bone fragments that were found. He was able to determine by looking at the bone fragments that they'd come from an adult human female. Now, understand that this information now was available to the investigators. Baldwin, Skolinski, they would have known that, and we'll show it in a minute, they knew that all this forensic information was being gathered. So hence, they were very strategic in their questioning to Brendan Dassey. And you'll see, we're going to go over it. So Bennett, by looking at these cremains, was able to determine, hey, they appear to be from an adult human female, and he gave it an age range, right? So it's very important to realize, Anthony Hills is correct. Neither Eisenberg nor Bennett nor any forensic anthropologist actually stepped foot on the Avery salvage yard. We'll go over it in a second. So essentially, he was provided the box of bones, and he was told, what are they? What do they represent? Are they animal? Are they human? Male? Female? One victim? Multiple victims? And that was it.
Are they Teresa's?
Yes, except you can't actually say they're from Teresa Horbach. The issue is, the investigators at that stage did not have the genomic DNA profile from Teresa Horbach. That came much later, when Fassbender...
Weeks later.
Yeah, weeks later, when they got the pap smear. And then Culhane prepared the genomic DNA, used muscle tissue from item BZ, got the 7 out of 15 loci match. At that stage, though, Teresa Horbach was a missing person who happened to be an adult human female. The investigators are putting 2 and 2 together, and they are becoming very, very suspicious, right? So if we have a look at the next slide. And Neverly, are you able to mute your microphone?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No hassles. No hassles. All right. So as you can see, this is what transpired. So if we look on the left-hand side, this is Stephen Avery's burn pit, an image you've seen thousands of times. Now, from that burn pit, they sifted the following cremains that are found in that box of bones, the so-called box of bones. That was sifted on November the 8th. Remember, Skolinski and Baldwin go and talk to Brendan on November the 10th. So Bennett has written his report. He would have told the investigators, hey, these are human cremains and they belong to an adult human female. They came from that burn pit, allegedly, right? Because Bennett was simply provided the box of bones. Eisenberg never stepped foot on the salvage yard, nor did Bennett. Also, on November the 10th, remember, they discovered item BZ. They never found item BZ. It was never in that box of bones. It was found 2 days later, right? And the Duke did an excellent presentation regarding the sifting of the burn pit. Now, so the investigators knew, oh my God, from Stephen's burn pit, we found adult human female bones. They also had Stephen Avery's burn barrel, which they were analyzing, and there was burnt electronics in that burn barrel. So the investigators knew that there are potentially the remains of Teresa in Stephen Avery's burn pit. Now, so item BZ actually didn't come from the ilium. It came from, if you have a look on the right-hand side where the arrow is pointing, you can see that on that slide, there's a chunk of muscle tissue. It's very likely that Culhane isolated muscle tissue.
I can blow that up. Let me switch here.
Yeah, so it didn't come from the ilium bone. It actually came either from that chunk of muscle tissue or muscle associated with that large bone fragment. Because Culhane was a little bit, the way she processed it, the way she said it wasn't very obvious, but it came from muscle tissue, right? And it was a 7 out of 15 loci match, 1 in a billion chance that it wasn't Teresa Halbach. So from a genetic standpoint, from a DNA standpoint, it's very likely, very, very likely that that muscle tissue was from Teresa Halbach. There's no doubt in my mind, she was definitely deceased. So this is what the investigators had, but they had more. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide. So before the investigators had questioned Brendan Dassey, they had the RAV4 that was found on November the 5th. Then on November the 8th, what did the investigators find? The 2 number plates belonging to the RAV4 and the key, which is found in Stephen Avery's master bedroom. That key was found by Lenkin Colburn. Kucharski was there as well. That key is Teresa Halbach's sub key that can operate her RAV4. That key only contains Stephen Avery's DNA. It does not contain Brendan's. In actual fact, they didn't even find Teresa Halbach's DNA on her own key. Jack 61.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I forgot to mute.
Okay. So think about this. From the investigators' point of view, Skolinski, Baldwin, they had all this information. Remember what Brendan said on November the 6th? I saw Teresa, I saw her RAV4, and I saw Uncle Stephen. They were all together. the tragedy of the situation is this. There is no way that Brendan had seen Teresa, the RAV4, and Stephen on October the 31st at 3:45. There's no way. The bus driver, unfortunately, made an error. Brendan Dassey changed his narrative. That immediately sent a red flag. Skolinski and Baldwin now went back to Crivets to question Brendan. Guys, do we have any comments or questions so far?
There's been several questions. I am highlighting them, so we'll get to them. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So let's have a look at the next slide. This is interesting, an interrogation that very few people talk about, but it is absolutely crucial. So now Skolinski and Baldwin go back to Crivets. They want to talk to Brendan. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the report. Now, Jack 61, is it true that there could be a recording?
No, there is a record. There is a recording, and I'm going to try to get it. I know that others have tried, but there's absolutely no reason this recording should not be released. So that is definitely on the plate.
Interesting. All right. So, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to go through his report, Skolinski and Baldwin's report. Now, remember, Skolinski is the one that tapped on the window, talked to O'Neill and said, mate, the bus driver saw Teresa Horbach taking pictures. I think Brendan Dassey is lying to you. And remember, Brendan changed his narrative twice. So
yeah, and all these kids saw it too. So
correct.
That puts Brendan right in the corner. Like, well, okay, yeah,
correct.
I guess I did.
And the tragedy is this: they made it up. They never asked the kids on the school bus. And Blaine, who's his brother, said, "I saw nobody. I just went home with my brother." Right? All right. So now let's have a look at the questions that Skolinski and Baldwin asked Brendan. Neville, do you see that slide?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what we'll do, we'll alternate it between yourself and Jack 61. Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay, so
yep, works for me.
Yeah, so we'll alternate the slides. So Neville, let's read the very first one.
All right. On Thursday, November 10, 2005, at approximately 12:05 p.m., Special Agent Kim J. Skrolinski and Investigator Todd Baldwin of the Marinette County Sheriff's Department interviewed Brendan R. Dassey, date of birth 10/19/1989, outside his grandfather's residence at North 9493 Highline Lane, town of Stevenson, Crivets, Marinette County, regarding this investigation. This was a follow-up interview with Dassey. While this interview was being conducted, Special Agent Kyra M. Schollhorn and Corrections Officer Mike Haupt of the Marinette County Sheriff's Department were obtaining buccal swabs and fingerprints and palm prints from Dassey's grandfather, Alan K. Avery, date of birth 5/3/1937, inside the residence pursuant to a search warrant. Special Agent Skrolinski asked Dassey if he remembered Special Agent Skrolinski and Investigator Baldwin from Sunday, November 6, 2005, and he said yes. Special Agent Skrolinski said he had a few more questions for Dassey regarding the disappearance of Teresa Horbach.
Okay, so notice what's happening. Brendan's grandfather is inside getting his fingerprints done and buccal swabs. Brendan Dassey is outside. Did you pick that up? So yep. It is very likely that Brendan is being interrogated by both investigators by himself, not
right.
Adult present.
That's right.
Yep. So he's now dealing with Skolinski, who's a no mucking around type of guy, very, very serious, and also Baldwin, who had questioned Brendan just 4 days prior. All right. So shall we have a look at the next slide? And Jack 61, are you happy to read that one?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. Dassey was asked when was the last time his family had a fire and the fire ring behind his mother Barb Younda's residence at Avery's Auto Salvage property in Manitowoc County. Dassey said it was probably at his brother Bobby's graduation party. Dassey was asked if that was a high school graduation party in the spring of 2005, and he said yes. Dassey was asked when was the last time his uncle, Stephen Avery, had a fire in the pit behind his residence, or more specifically, behind his garage. Dassey said it was either last Tuesday night, November 1st, or Wednesday night, November 2nd, 2005. But he thinks it was Wednesday night. Dassey said he was hoping to have a fire with Stephen on Monday night, October 31st, 2005, but his mom got in a fight with Stephen on Saturday, October the 29th, 2005, and told him he cannot have a fire with Stephen on Monday. Dassey said this fight was because his mom did not want Stephen to waste $40 by placing an ad in the Auto Trader magazine for her van.
Okay. What did Skolinski and Baldwin immediately hone in on? Immediately.
Fire behind Stephen's garage.
Fire in two locations behind Barb's house, and I'll show you pictures, and behind Stephen's garage. They immediately went to fire.
Yep.
Right? So they're not mucking around. They're honing straight in. Remember, the investigators have got all that forensic evidence, including the cremains. Now they want to question Brendan about fires. Shall we do the next slide? And Neville, do you see the next slide?
Yes, I do.
Okay, let's go for it.
Dassey was asked what type of materials he and Stephen burned in the fire pit on Wednesday night, and he said branches and other wood they collected from the yard. He said they also burned garbage, a few old tires, and an old car seat. Dassey said he and Stephen drove his mom's golf cart around the yard and picking up these branches, wood, tires, and car seat. He estimated that they burnt about 5 old tires in the fire. I have a comment after this.
Yep.
Dassey said the car seat was maroon in color and had been sitting next to his mother's garage for about 2 weeks before Stephen decided to burn it. He said he helped Stephen put the car seat into the fire after they had the fire going for a while. Dassey thought they were going to use the car seat in the van that his mom was trying to sell, but for some reason they did not do that. Dassey was asked how Stephen contacted him to have a fire. He said Stephen called him on his mom's home telephone sometimes after supper. Dassey thought this may have been around 8 p.m. He said Stephen said something like, "Why don't you come outside and help me with the fire?" Dassey said when he went outside, which was about 5 to 10 minutes after Stephen called him. Stephen had already piled some branches and garbage on the fire and had just lit it. He observed 2 black plastic garbage bags already in the fire and starting to burn. Dassey was asked what was in the garbage bags, and he said it looked like regular garbage.
Neville, did you have a comment?
Yes, I would like to focus that Brendan said that all of this, picking up the wood, driving around, collecting tires, and the car seat, was done on Wednesday. Not Monday, the 31st, but Wednesday. And this is the second time that he said it here, Wednesday. And also somebody in the chat said that originally, I think it was Anthony Hills, originally Bobby said it was Wednesday as well. So
Yes.
We have shifting fires.
Yes, we do. We do. Jack 61, do you have any comments?
Yeah, because to add to what everyone's saying and everything, and everyone is saying, remember the phone call on October 30th. Brendan was at Stevens on the 30th, and that never is talked about because Jody called and I think they may have been in the garage. I think Stephen was on the cordless phone. They may have been in the garage doing whatever. It's never talked about, ever.
Yeah. Yep, 100% correct. So what you've got here is that Brendan is actually not sure when they actually had the fire.
That's right.
Now, this is November the 10th. You would think that it'd be fresh in his mind. And remember, even Stephen was unsure about when they had the fire, and there was a lot of controversy, and they talked about it on Convicting a Murderer as well, that it was his sister, Barb, that reminded Stephen that, oh, didn't you have the fire on October the 31st? And then Stephen agreed. And then Stephen said, oh, yeah, well, then Brendan had to be with me. But Beverly made a very interesting point that they're getting confused about times. And also remember Earl and Robert Fabian. Remember when Robert Fabian said that he had smelt the smoke coming from the burn barrel?
Yep.
And Earl could not remember it. And Earl said, well, if Robert said it, then it must be true. I believe him. And remember the narrative that Robert Fabian gave, that him and Earl went rabbit hunting, and he thought it was on the Monday. But then I think it was Robert Fabian's wife who said, no, it was the Wednesday. You got the day wrong.
That's right.
Right?
So how many people are talking about Wednesday? The Wednesday?
Several
people,
several
exactly.
People. Yep, several people are talking about on the Wednesday. So they're getting things mixed up, right? But the damage is done, guys. The damage is done. Why? Because Brendan has now admitted, A, being at the fire, and B, with his uncle, and C, helping his uncle put the seat in the fire, right?
But on a Wednesday. I'm not going to let this go, so you know.
I understand. I understand. But to the investigators, they're going, human cremains found in the burn pit. We have now Brendan admitting that there was a fire and that he helped his uncle at the burn pit at the fire. So the investigators, Jack 61.
Just to add in briefly, as I recall, originally Stephen thought it was the week prior to this. He just couldn't remember. And then there was a conversation. Actually, I think there was more than one, but there was definitely one around the 18th of November between Barb and Stephen. And she says, no, it was on the 31st because that was the day that, Scott and I went to Green Bay to see his mom.
Yes.
And I guess she eventually basically talked him into it. He couldn't recall.
No, he could not.
She was the one who was, I'm not saying nefariously, but she was the one who was potentiating that it was Monday because she had, I guess, a clear recollection tying it to the trip to the hospital.
Well, yes. And I think I think the investigators were pushing her. That we don't really know about. So
we have all these people saying a Wednesday and one person saying a Monday. So Correct. Why did they go with that? I mean, we know why. It's a rhetorical question, but
yeah, it is. It is a rhetorical question because Teresa Halbach wasn't seen after October the 31st, right? So any subsequent fire after that date, well, it could be anything. So for the investigators, the fire had to be Monday night, had to be October the 31st, right? Which is very, very interesting. So if we have a look at the next slide, Jack 61, this is what we've been talking about, right? We'll just wait for the next slide. We're looking at the burn pit, Stephen Avery's burn pit. Now, luckily, these photographs were taken on November the 6th by Trooper Reese. These represent photographs, in situ photographs of the burn pit. These are very, very important because they were actually showed in the court, in the trials.
These are pure gold. Without these photographs, there's a lot of things we cannot say.
Correct. 100% correct. The photographs, they're limited in resolution, right? There are things that you can't say, whether it's bones are present, bones aren't present, but there doesn't appear to be anything obvious like a pile of bones in the middle of the ash pile. But this is November the 6th. How they could have appeared on November the 8th could be completely different. So these photographs are from November the 6th, right? They're from Trooper Reese. So it's pretty obvious that Trooper Reese got also pretty close to the burn pit, as I'll show you. Now, if the state's narrative is correct, Teresa Halbach's cremains are right in front of Bear. If the state's narrative is correct, the remains of Teresa Halbach are right there because
Well,
they're discovered allegedly 2 days later, Jack 61.
and not only that, and I bitch about this a lot. I have been for years. We all have. That this alleged vertebrae or whatever that
Yeah,
Sergeant
Jason
Jason
Joseph.
Jost found on the 8th would have also been laying in the grass.
Correct.
Trooper Reese doesn't mention anything about a pile of bones, seeing
No,
any bones, nothing,
course
smelling
not.
anything, nothing.
Nothing.
And he's right. He's within feet of this whole
He is.
thing.
And we'll
So,
prove it to you that he was standing right next to the burn pit,
there you
right?
go.
So it's really interesting that Trooper Reese, he went everywhere taking photographs. He didn't note anything in his report about a spinal cord or spine cord fragment in the grass. He would have been walking around. In fact, he would have been very, very close. If you look at the photograph on the left-hand side, it would have been in that region, only a couple of feet in front of him. He never noted any spinal cord bone. And in actual fact, the irony is that bone never got collected, right? I checked the trial testimony. They only sifted what was in the ash on November the 10th when Pevito and his team came. They only looked at the burn pit. They looked at the area where Bear's cages, the dog kennel. They found no human bones. Their focus and concentration was actually the ash pile. So the vertebra bone that Jost and Sipple looked at could not have been human. It never got collected.
And they didn't even take a photo of it. Like,
No,
okay,
no
God,
photograph.
what's this? Click.
Yep.
Hey, what's
Yep.
this up in the fire pit? Click. Nothing. And
Yep.
I have a real problem. We all have a real problem with this whole
Yep.
series of events that, well, it explodes.
Yep, 100% correct. So what you notice, Jack 61, in that picture, where your pointer is, that's the pile of tire wire. Tire wire. Remember what Brendan was saying about the tire wire? That tire wire is what got actually scraped out of the burn pit by Sturdivant. He got a rake, got it from Bob Yunder's property, and he raked it out. Right? He shifted it out of the burn pit. So if we have a look at the next diagram, 2 pictures at Jack 61. So as you can see on the right-hand side, you can see the shadow of Trooper Reese. So Trooper Reese was standing right next to the burn pit. On the left-hand side, you can see that Bear was just sitting down, right? Sitting down in the corner, totally ignoring Trooper Reese. So Bear may have barked initially, but once he realized that Trooper Reese and other officers were not a threat, he's sitting down very, very passive. But make no mistake, Trooper Reese was right next to the burn pit, right? Within feet of it. Trooper Reese, in his report, did not mention an aggressive dog, did not mention any bones, either in the grass or in the burn pit itself, and he never talked about any type of offensive smell. And Trooper Reese was right next to the burn pit. But remember, for Skorlinski and Baldwin, all they knew was that human bones were found in Stephen Avery's burn pit. And it's pretty obvious that now what they're doing is they're honing in on Brendan and asking him about the burn pit. Brendan has just now admitted being at the burn pit, helping his uncle, and you can just see the seat on the edge of the burn pit, right? And they tell a lie to Brendan as well regarding that seat as well. Okay, so this is, guys, what we're talking about, the burn pit area. All right, so Jack 61, if we can have the next slide. Is it your turn to read, Jack 61?
It is.
Okay, let's go for it.
All right. Dassey was asked if Stephen had a fire on Monday, October 31, 2005. And he said he did not see a fire on Monday. Dassey was asked if Stephen had a fire on Tuesday, November 1st, 2005, and he said he could not have been that the night he and Stephen had a fire, but he thought it was on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2005. Dassey did go to school every day last week and said if Stephen had a fire during the day, he would not know about it. Dassey was asked if he noticed any strange odor coming from the fire pit when he and Stephen were burning, and he said no. He was asked if, after the fire, Stephen dug through the ashes or smashed any items that had not burned, and he said he did not see that. Dassey did say that Stephen took some wire out of the fire and told Dassey to put it in a tan car over by the old garbage near the shop. I'm sorry,
Garage. Yeah.
garage near the shop. I said garbage. Dassey said the length of the wire was long and he thought it was about almost 20 feet. Dassey was asked how long he and Stephen were outside burning at the fire on Wednesday night, and he said probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. Dassey thought they both left the fire at the same time to go into their residence. He said that was the only fire he was aware of that Stephen had last week. Dassey was asked if he had ever gone back inside of Stephen's garage since Monday night, October 31, 2005, when he helped push the gray Suzuki into Stephen's garage, and he said no.
Yep, he said no. So again, guys, the focus is very much on the fire, when the fire took place. And Brendan is consistently saying, nah, I thought the fire was on November the 2nd, right?
Yeah, he's not wavering this one.
No, he's not. But for the investigators, the fire has to be on October the 31st, correct? Right? It can't be any other night.
No.
Because it wouldn't make any sense at all, Jack 61.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay. Neville, would you like to read the next slide, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dassey was asked to recall the events of Monday, October 31st, 2005, when he and his brother Blaine got off the school bus and were walking towards their residence. He said as he and Blaine were walking up to their residence, which is right next door to Stephen's residence, he observed Stephen and Halbach talking outside Halbach's vehicle. He said as they got closer, he and Blaine commented to each other that must be the woman who was here from the Auto Trader magazine to take photos of their mom's van. Dassey said as he and Blaine got closer to their residence, he observed Stephen walk towards his residence and observed Halbach get into her vehicle. He did not see her drive away. Dassey knew about the Auto Trader photographer because a few days before this, his mom told him she was coming to take photos of the van.
Okay, so now Brendan is giving another narrative. Right?
Yes.
He's changing narrative again, right? Remember when he said that? Neville.
Well, the way I see it is how, if they get off the bus at 3:45, there's no way that they could see Teresa. So I'm thinking, are they say, are you sure, Brendan? You must have, you must have seen her or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just like walk him through the process, and he agreed.
Yep. Correct. So now he's changing narrative again. Okay. So now he's saying that, he saw Teresa, Stephen walked towards his trailer and he saw Teresa get in her car, but he didn't see her leave. Whose narrative is that?
It's Bobby's. He's repeating it.
He's repeating Bobby Dassey's narrative, right?
But
remember,
that's a good thing because look, he says he saw Stephen walk towards his residence, not Teresa. And then we have that other report that says he saw Stephen. Yeah, not Teresa.
Correct. So what you're getting here is a hybrid story. You're getting a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and Brendan is mashing it all together, right? Now, it's because he never saw any of these events. He couldn't have. Now, you got to think that the investigators, Skolinski and Baldwin, are going, this seems pretty far-fetched because if Teresa arrived at about 2:35, right? Because remember, they've got the narrative of Bobby Dassey when he went hunting. How on earth can Brendan be seeing Teresa, Stephen, her RAV4 at about 3:45, 4 o'clock? The Auto Trader photographer, Teresa, normally only stays for 5 minutes. How can you explain why Teresa will be there for an extra hour with Stephen?
They had to, yeah, they had to know that this narrative that Brendan was telling them was wrong. They had to know.
Yes.
No question.
Yes.
No question.
So what they were doing, guys, is they were letting Brendan hang himself. Right? So the investigators knew that something was not right here, and they were allowing Brendan to keep on talking. Right? So if we have a look at the next slide, Jack 61, would you like to read that one?
Yep.
Thank you.
Dassey said he and Blaine then walked into their house, and their other brother, Bobby, was not home at the time. Dassey said Stephen never came over to their residence the rest of that day, but Stephen did call him on the telephone to ask him to help him push the gray Suzuki into his garage. Dassey was asked why his brother Blaine did not help him, and him and Stephen pushed the Suzuki, and he said right after Stephen called him, Blaine called one of his friends, Jason Cresco. So he was on the phone with Cresco when he and Stephen were pushing the Suzuki. Dassey was asked who put the items on top of the hood of the Suzuki. He said he did not know because he did not do that. Dassey said after he pushed the Suzuki into Stephen's garage, he went back home. Dassey was asked what was located next to the Suzuki in the garage, and he said there were tools and a snowmobile. Dassey was asked if another vehicle was parked in there in the garage, and he said no.
Okay. Do you get what Skolinski's getting at when he said,
Oh,
is there another vehicle parked in the garage? Who
the
was
RAV.
he? The raffle. Okay. The raffle. Okay. So you know exactly where Skolinski is going in this. And Brendan's got no idea. So if we have a look at the next diagram, you can see that Brendan Dassey was indeed correct, right? So this is a photograph of Stephen Avery's garage that shows the Suzuki, and it shows the snowmobile, and it shows all the stuff that was on top of the Suzuki. But what's interesting is that on the ground, can you see on the ground, you got all these marks, oil droplets, all fluids spilled all over the place from the vehicles themselves, right? Because remember what Brendan actually said in the end, my uncle asked me to come over and clean up his garage to clean the floor, right? And you can see all the stuff that's all on the ground everywhere. But what is interesting is this. On the right-hand side, the detectives did a walkthrough on November the 6th, right, with a video camera that went into Stephen's garage. Now, remember, Brendan Dassey left for Crivets on November the 4th. Stephen left for Crivets on November the 5th. After that, no one was allowed back on the property. So Brendan was correct when he said, oh yeah, in the garage was the Suzuki and the snowmobile, right? So you can see the picture of the Suzuki and the snowmobile in the garage on November the 6th. So there's been a lot of controversy. Well, did Stephen take out the Suzuki, take out the snowmobile? Did he back in the RAV4, hide the RAV4, etc., etc.? So, but Brendan said, hey, in the garage, when I was there was a Suzuki and the snowmobile, and he was correct. Now, item FL is meant to be, to answer the question, right at the back under the green compressor. Okay. Now, when they searched the garage multiple times before they spoke to Brendan, they never found item FL. They never found item FK. Right. So they seem to have missed those pictures. Now, Trooper Reese came back. I think he photographed on the 6th, the 7th, and did he come back on the 10th and the 11th? I don't think he was there on the 8th.
He helped search. He helped search on the 10th. He was there on the 8th, but he didn't take any photographs. They were there every day. because Trooper Reese was part of the Troopers Reconstruction Unit
Correct.
that go out to
Correct.
wrecks and that kind of thing.
Yep.
They were there basically every day, but
Yep.
according to what their reports, Reese didn't take any photos on the 8th for some reason.
On the 8th,
I
no.
don't. Yeah.
No, correct.
I'm not sure about the 9th because I'm pretty sure he helped search the quarry. You know, they got
Yep.
a large group of officers to help scour the quarry. He did take photos on the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th.
Yeah, yeah, and we've got a record of all the photographs that he took.
Yeah,
and also on our website we've got the pictures that he took. But the ones of the burn pit are priceless because they represent in situ photographs before the investigators touched anything, allegedly
right.
touched anything at the burn pit.
That's right.
Right. Okay, so there's no doubt what Brendan said was correct. When he was there was the Suzuki and the snowmobile. But there was a lot of controversy. Well, when did Stephen put in the Suzuki? When did he put in the snowmobile? Was the RAV4 potentially there? As Skolinski is alluding to, right? Okay, so there's a question by Pete Moss. When do you think that photo of the burn pit was taken? Those photographs of the burn pit were taken on November the 6th by Trooper Reese.
They are metadated. We do
Yes,
have the
they are.
metadata. It's embedded in the
Yep.
photograph, and they're also dated in the folders of the
Correct.
20 rolls of film that he took. So
Yep. Correct.
they seem to be correct.
Yeah, and Trooper Reese documented every photograph he took,
That's
the
right.
camera, the lens, the film, the whole lot. Beautiful. Yep, and we know exactly where he went and what photographs he took. So those burn pit photographs were before the investigators even saw anything at the burn pit or even noticed it, right? So what Trooper Reese had to say was very, very important. All right. So now Brendan is asked further questions. Can we have the next slide, Jack61? And keep your questions coming, please. Neverly, is it your turn to read?
Yes.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. Dassey was asked if the plan for this past weekend was for Stephen to stay at the Avery residence at Highland Lane, which is Crivets, until Sunday, November 6, 2005, and he said yes. He was asked if there was any discussion about Stephen going home earlier, perhaps on Saturday, and he said no. Dassey was asked about the mound of rocks and dirt next to Stephen's fire pit behind his garage, where the doghouse is located. He said that mound had been there from the previous occupant of Stephen's house long before Stephen moved there. Dassey was asked if he knew what was underneath the mound, and he said no. That was actually a good question.
Yeah.
Dassey was asked about clothes that were found in his mother's fire ring behind their residence. He said those were old clothes that did not fit Dassey or his brothers anymore. So
Okay.
he at least knew that. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep. Correct.
Easy answer.
Correct. But notice, guys, what Skolinski and Baldwin are asking. Was Stephen planning to come home earlier on Crivets? Guys,
to finish the job.
Hi, we have Cherie. He's joined us. Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Cherie.
Hey, Cherie. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So why were they asking Brendan if Stephen was going to come back early? What do you think was the reason?
To finish the job.
Yep.
Well, there was this other narrative that Stephen was going to come back to see Jody and then slip over to the Avery salvage yard and do all this bullshit, crush the car and all this. It's crazy. It's just absolutely an insane story. There's no way he could have done it without anyone seeing him anyway.
Correct. So remember, the detectives Fassbender and Wiegert spoke to Stephen on November the 9th, one day prior, and they said to him, "You're going to come back and crush the car." So now they're asking Brendan, was your uncle planning to come back early? So notice how devious and crafty they are. They're asking Brendan whether Stephen was going to come back early. And Brendan goes, no, he was planning to stay, right? He was planning to stay. Amazing. All right. So if we have a look at the next slide, a lot of you guys may not have noticed this, but behind Barb Yunder's property, there are 2 burn rings where they just put in garbage and trash and they burn it. The investigators obviously checked them out, found clothing, and asked Brendan, what's that clothing doing in your mother's fire ring? Brendan said, oh, there's stuff that didn't fit. So these guys are already putting 2 and 2 together, right? They're thinking, oh, so they burnt Teresa's electronics, her body, and clothing are all in the fire pits, right? But obviously Brendan said, no, it was just clothing that didn't fit. We got rid of it, right? So who had seen these pictures before of the fire ring? Who had
I
not
haven't.
seen? Yeah, interesting,
Oh,
isn't
I
it?
have
oh
not.
yeah, I've seen them. Oh yeah.
Yep. Again, taken by Trooper Reese. He took pictures of absolutely everything. All right. So if we can continue the next slide. Jack, you want to read this, Jack 61, or should we get Cherie to read it out?
Well, if Cherie wants to read it, she's more than welcome to.
Cherie, would you like to?
Sure.
You see slide H7?
Yes.
Okay, let's go for it.
Dassey was asked if he saw Stephen dig up any ashes or haul any ashes out of his fire pit at any time last week, and he said no. Dassey was asked if he saw Stephen do any stomping or crushing in the fire pit at any time last week, and he said no. Dassey was asked if Stephen had the John Deere skid steer over at the fire pit any day last week, and he said no. Dassey said he has never seen the John Deere skid steer in Stephen's backyard, and the only time he saw Stephen operate it was trying to smooth out the road to their residences. Dassey said the dirt road has a lot of potholes. Dassey was asked when was the last time Stephen burned in that fire pit behind his house other than last week. He said he could not recall, but said it was probably several weeks before that. Dassey was asked when was the last time Stephen burned in his burn barrel, and he said last week. He said Stephen probably burns 2 times a week in his burn barrel. Dassey was advised that there were several tools by the fire pit, such as a shovel, a rake, and a trowel. He was asked if he used any of these tools during the night he and Stephen had a fire. Dassey said he may have used the shovel to move the burning material around.
Do we have any comments? Do we have any comments on this one? Right. So now the investigators, they're not mucking around. They ask Brendan, well, did you see Stephen shoveling anything, removing any ash, stomping, get the John Deere to flatten things out? The investigators are already trying to put 2 and 2 together. Jack 61.
Yeah, they're trying to get Brendan to say, "Oh yeah, he was smashing shit and he was breaking stuff and used a hammer and all this other stuff." And the rake wasn't even there when they were there. So
Correct.
yeah,
correct. So there's not if none of this took place in terms of Teresa being cremated in Stephen's burn pit, Brendan Dassey's got no idea what they're talking about,
no.
right? But remember, when they got the cremains were tiny, small, crushed, fragmented. Notice what Skolinski asked Brendan. Did your uncle do any stomping or any crushing? Use the John Deere? Did he haul out any ashes? And Brendan's going, no, right? Did you use instruments? Did you use tools? So there's no doubt that Skolinski and Baldwin are being very targeted at their questions. Now, look what happens next. And Neverly, would you like to read it out?
Sure.
The hammer is going to fall. Let's go for it.
Okay. Special Agents Kralinski and Investigator Baldwin left Dassey and went inside the residence to check on the status of the search warrant execution. A couple of minutes later, Special Agents Kralinski returned to Dassey and told him that the investigators believed that on Monday, October 31st, 2005, Stephen killed Halbach and burned her body in his fire pit. Special Agent Kralinski told Dassey that the investigators found pieces of female bone and teeth Dassey was asked if he helped Stephen burn Halbach's body, and he said no. Dassey was asked if he saw anything in the fire pit that resembled a human body or human bone, and he said no. Special Agent Skrzynski told him that this is not the time to be lying to protect Stephen. Dassey said he did not know anything about Stephen burning Halbach. The interview was terminated at approximately 12:30 p.m. Wow.
Boom.
They
The
are
hammer
not
fell.
fucking around.
Nope.
Not
The
at
hammer
all.
fell.
Yep.
The hammer fell. This is November the 10th. This is way before Fassbender and Wiegert. The investigators put two and two together, right? They looked at all the forensic evidence. They looked at the bones. They looked at the cremains, and what Brendan Dassey just admitted to doing. They're now saying they told him the narrative that Teresa Halbach was killed by Stephen Avery. She was burnt in the burn pit, and now is not the time to protect your uncle. If you're a 16-year-old kid and you hear these accusations from two senior investigators, detectives, would you be worried? Yes or no? I never left.
Yeah, I'd be worried as an adult.
Yep. Jack 61.
I think it's relevant to mention that at this point in time, if they're putting these things together in their mind, that Dassey wasn't taken in and potentially arrested even now, because he's admitted to being over there. He's admitted they had a fire. And they're putting all this other stuff with it. So, but they didn't have anything on Brendan. They didn't have
Oh.
anything. Looks like they don't right now. There's nothing there. So
Correct.
I just have to wonder again. I've been doing this so long. My mind wanders now to these back conversations that could potentially have happened with Kratz and Gone. I mean, I don't know about. I'm not sure if Gone was there yet or not. Probably Fallon was probably in the loop whether he was officially on the case yet or not. I can't remember. But regardless, Kratz was. So were there conversations going on and Kratz saying, well, you don't have enough to arrest the kid? I don't know that. But it is damn funny that nothing happened for 5 months or 4.5, whatever.
Yep. 100% correct. So remember, this just confirms that Brendan was by himself, because the investigators left Brendan, went back inside to make sure that the search warrant was being executed, i.e. the buccal swabs, the fingerprints. So his grandfather would have been inside, and Brendan was by himself being interrogated without an adult present, without an attorney, no legal assistant. And they, in actual fact, asked Brendan, I counted it, 27 questions.
That's crazy.
I have a
27
question.
questions. Neverly.
At this time, was this an interrogation or an interview, legally speaking?
No, this was a full-on interrogation.
But
Okay.
did they read him the Miranda rights at this point?
No, I don't believe they did. No. Not that I can see in that report.
Didn't they say something while they were in Crevitz, like even when they were in the Trans Am?
The Grand Am?
In the Grand Am, they said you're free to leave.
Grand Am, yeah.
They said that they said to Brendan, you're free to leave. They never read the Miranda warnings to Brendan. They said to him, you're free to leave. They never, from this report, they never said to him, you're free to leave. We've just got questions we want to ask you. Now, potentially, Brendan could have said, am I under arrest? No, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a loophole in the law. As long as you're volunteering to be there and answer questions, then they didn't do anything wrong.
Okay. Let's
legally speaking,
yeah,
there's a huge difference between custodial and non-custodial.
Yes.
Huge difference.
Yes. So put it this way. I want to ask people in chat. I want to ask people on the panel. You're Brendan Dassey, and you committed this crime. You were involved, right? You were involved later on, as Brendan alludes to, the rape, torture, murder. You did this. Would you be talking to Skrzynski, Jack 61?
Not a chance in hell. I got nothing to say to you.
Yep.
No
Okay.
way. No way.
Okay. Neverly, would you be talking to Skalinsky and Baldwin?
Nope.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Yep. Cherie, I don't recall. Would you be talking to Baldwin and Skalinsky?
No. Knowing
Yeah.
what I know now, I don't think I would ever talk to, without an attorney
Ever.
present, even though I am
I'd
one.
be,
No. And it'd be
yeah, I
interesting.
wouldn't be saying, I want my lawyer. I'd be screaming on top of my lungs so somebody else can hear me as well.
All right. So would you associate yourself with the burn pit? Would you associate yourself with the burn pit?
No, I wouldn't.
No.
Not a chance.
No. So we have a look at the next slide. Let's summarize what
As-
Brendan. Sorry, Neverly.
It's okay, especially if they keep coming back to
Yes.
talk to you. So you know
Yes.
that something's up.
Yeah,
This is
correct.
not just a casual
Correct.
conversation. This is like, oh, we're curious. Oh, no. Something's going down.
But you have to admit, it never tweaked in Brendan. It
No,
never
of
tweaked,
course not.
right?
Of course not. He's concerned with wrestling and with
Yep.
video games and, worried about his little girlfriend. And
Yep.
he doesn't care.
No.
Yeah.
So look at this. You're Brendan Dassey. In just 2 interrogations, just 2, and they were interrogations. Let me summarize what Brendan has admitted to the investigators. A, he's admitted seeing Teresa Horbach on October the 31st. This is the missing person. Brendan Dassey admitted seeing Teresa Horbach. He admitted seeing Teresa's Toyota RAV4. He also admitted seeing Teresa with Stephen Avery. The first 3 points are patently false. Guys, would you agree? There's no chance in hell that Brendan Dassey, when he got off the bus at 3:45, saw Teresa, Stephen, and a RAV4. That's patently false.
I agree completely, 100%.
Blaine was asked, "You're with your brother. What did you see?" "Nothing. Me and my brother, we just went home." Now, after Skalinsky and Baldwin spoke with Brendan, this is what he admitted. He admitted being at the burn pit with Stephen Avery when there was a fire going on. Brendan Dassey also admitted helping Stephen at the burn pit. So, if you zoom back out a little bit, Jack 61, the investigators are going, Brendan Dassey either is a witness to a crime or a co-conspirator. Guys, would you agree? Would you agree?
Yes.
That's investigators
Absolutely.
are going, this kid is either a witness to a crime or actually a co-conspirator.
Well,
Now,
if
Neverly.
I may, I think that they kind of had a sense that something's off with this kid and how he's answering, not how, what he's telling them. But they reported that and kept it kind of in the back pocket just in case. And I think that's when Kratz got in and did his magic on Brendan.
All right. Okay. So here's a bit of a rhetorical question, right? Do you think Skalinsky and Baldwin ever entered their mind that the kid's just making this stuff up? Right? Do you think they were ever thinking that Brendan was undergoing a false confession, a false narrative?
Good question. I don't know.
Good. Yeah.
I
don't
know.
think that they were like 100% convinced that Brendan did anything or knew anything.
Okay.
That's
So
my
this-
personal belief. I could
so
be wrong,
thi-
of course.
So at this stage, would you agree that they're looking at Brendan going, mate, you're either a witness to what your uncle did and you're covering up, or you actively helped and you're an active co-conspirator? Would you agree? Would you guys
Yeah,
agree?
I think that's possible, with what they knew at the time. And again, it depends on what this push was that they were getting. I know that I'm sure they were getting pushed in a certain direction. I'm sure of it.
Okay. But would you agree, guys, that Brendan Dassey was in deep trouble now?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it was definitely on the
Yes,
radar.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
they didn't have any anything forensically to tie him to the anything, really.
Not at this
Or
stage.
anybody else to corroborate what he's saying, because Stephen wasn't
Correct.
saying this.
That's
Correct.
right.
No, Stephen never.
And Blaine wasn't, you know.
Correct. 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 And Bobby Dassey never saw anything either, right? So the narrative of what is going to transpire came from one person and one person only, and that's Brendan Dassey. And welcome, Becca. Welcome to in chat. Good to see you here. All right. Now, if you thought that was bad, Jack 61, can we have the next slide? Oh boy, this was the turning point for Brendan, and that's Kayla, his own cousin. And Kayla Avery, like I said, is Brendan Dassey's cousin, and she's the daughter of both Candy and Earl Avery. And of course, Candy and Earl appeared on Convicting a Murderer. Now, Jack 61, were both Earl and Candy complimentary to Stephen, or they wanted to rip him apart?
Rip him apart. It was awful. It's so bad. It's really unwatchable to me. It's such a really bad way to me for a documentary to be made, considering how well produced Sean Reckon put together a documentary. It's just awful. It's just awful.
Yeah, but look at this. What Kayla disclosed, and we'll talk about it now, was the crucial turning point for everything for Brendan. Now, if you notice the interrogation that Baldwin and Skolinski did with Brendan, the reason why they didn't arrest him is that Brendan never said, "Oh, I saw a body part. I heard screaming." He never mentioned Teresa Horbach, apart from, "Hey, look, I just saw her with my uncle and she got in her car," and that's it. Would you guys agree? There was nothing to arrest Brendan for.
Yep, I agree.
Right? Brendan could have just been an innocent kid. He helped out his uncle, do a little bit, getting stuff from around the yard, put it on the fire, and he went home. That's why he wasn't arrested. But what Kayla said completely changed the spotlight.
It did.
It did.
And I'm one of these that I don't like to go too far off the rail here on any of this stuff. But my personal belief is that Kayla was pushed into this by Candy. That's my personal belief. And even with what she said, Wiegert and Fassbender, and then eventually Fallon, they twisted. They wouldn't believe her, and we're going to see that.
Right. And if I could just add this point, and I think it's relevant, didn't Candy on Convicting a Murderer say, Stephen had this great big whopping fire, and we wonder why his house didn't burn down?
Yeah, it didn't melt the house. She did say that, and she has never uttered those words before that anywhere that I've ever seen, anywhere.
Right? So isn't that very, very interesting? So if we have a look at the next slide. So essentially, this is a really good summary, which I got from Brian Galini from the Interrogation of Brendan Dassey. It's what happened next. Who would like to read this out? It's a really good summary. Who would like to read it out?
If no one wants to, I will, but it's entirely up to the ladies.
I can do it if you want me to. I know that Jack is busy with starting questions, so.
Okay, Neverly.
Please go for it, Neverly.
Yeah, Neverly, would you like to read this out? So
Sure.
this is what happened next. Let's go for it.
Okay. Investigators left Dassey alone for several months after questioning him in November. But in January of 2006, Kayla Avery, Dassey's 15-year-old cousin, walked into Susan Brandt's office at Michigan High School. At the time, Brandt was in interning. How do you say this?
Interning.
Interning at both the high
Interning.
school and the Michigan Middle School as part of completing her master's degree in counselor education. According to Brandt, Kayla entered her office and said she was scared, quote unquote, because, quote, her uncle, Stephen Avery, had asked one of her cousins to help move a body, end of quote. The cousin to whom she was referring was, of course, Dassey. The next month, especially on February 20th, 2006, Calumet County investigators Mark Wiegert and Wendy Baldwin interviewed Kayla. During that interview, Kayla told investigators that Dassey was, quote, acting up lately, end of quote, and in particular that Dassey, quote, would just stare into space and start crying, basically uncontrollably, end of quote. She also relayed to investigators that, in her opinion, Dassey had recently lost approximately 40 pounds, which is over 18 kilos.
That's a lot.
That's huge. Based on Kayla's February 20th interview, Wiegert decided to question Dassey again. On Monday, February 27, 2006, Detective Wiegert and Tom Fassbender, a special agent with the Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigations Special Assignments Bureau, pulled Dassey out of the class at Michigan High School and questioned him. The interrogation, which took place in a conference room at the school without a lawyer or guardian present, began at 12:30 p.m. and concluded at 2:14 p.m.
Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to unpack this, right? Because remember, you had the November the 6th interrogation of Brendan, November 10th interrogation of Brendan, but he wasn't arrested. Now Kayla enters into the picture, right? And so we're going to unpack what Kayla said.
But this is months later. We're four plus months later.
Yes.
So
yes.
To me, and I must add this, and I apologize to Doc and everyone, but
No.
but to me, here we are, 4 months sliding, for all of November, all of December, all of January, getting into February. I don't know what they were discussing by this time. All three special prosecutors were part of the case, but they knew they had a problem with Stephen's case. It was weak because of the lawsuit. The planting thing was definitely prevalent, certainly within the community, with what happened with Stephen in 1985 and him getting freed in 2003. I think they knew they had a problem. Again, I'm speculating. I can't prove any of this. I just know what it looks like. I know the end result, and that's what I have to look at.
Well,
so yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Jesse Swan, we can answer that question very simply. As the investigators were getting in the forensic evidence and looking at for DNA, for blood, who was conspicuously absent in all the forensic evidence that they were testing?
Brendan had nothing.
They had nothing on Brendan. Okay.
Right.
But Brendan admitted being at the burn pit with his uncle. So the question is this: is he just a witness or is he a co-conspirator? They had nothing on him except now.
Well,
Kayla said.
Right.
What Kayla said changed the dynamics. Right?
Well,
and she's only a child herself.
That's right. But I have to add in the Marie effect, Marie Avery. And there was an investigation starting in 2004 about this. They closed that investigation because they didn't have anything. They couldn't bring charges against Stephen for these alleged acts. And I'm sure that whatever happened with Candy, and potentially even Earl, that in effect, to me, we know that Candy contacted law enforcement more than once. She called them. We know she did.
Yes.
I think there was movement in the background. This is Jack speculating. I'm not asking anyone out there to believe me at all. But I think she was in contact with them, trying to find a way to get to Stephen, and she did not give a shit about Brendan, what would happen to him. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So if we have a look, I agree. There was something going on in the background. There's no doubt about it. But Kayla said something else. Apart from the moving of the body, which involved Mike Osmondson and caused a lot of trouble during Stephen's trial, Kayla said something else. We have a look at the next slide. All right. So this is Fallon asking Brent. Jaxis one, would you read Fallon's part and I can read out the answer?
Sure. Okay. Question. All right. What else, if anything, did she tell you about that?
She also said she was scared about going to the shop. She specifically asked if blood can come up through concrete. Oh, God.
What?
Blood can come up through concrete. This is Kayla.
Would a 15, 16-year-old even think about that, ever be really concerned about this? That's
A
coming
child.
from an adult. Yeah.
Yep. But do you think this had an effect? Oh, yeah. So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide. Now, we're fast forwarding. We're forwarding in the future, right? This is after Brendan gets arrested. And we'll come back. We'll unpack this. They get a search warrant. And of course, what do? They go inside Stephen Avery's garage and they jackhammer his garage, parts of his garage, right? And in actual fact, they took, I read the report, 15 feet of concrete several inches down, all based on what Kayla said. Except this isn't the shop that she was scared of. This was Stephen Avery's garage. They took it seriously, right? So they used a jackhammer. They bought in a company and they jackhammered 15 feet of concrete, I think about a foot or so wide and about several inches deep. We have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. What the investigators did is they took a total, it's the next slide, the one after this one. They took 16 concrete chunks. These guys were serious. And what they were looking for was the presence of blood. So they did a whole stack of swabs, and you can check it in CASO. There's a huge number of swabs. Now, testing for the presence of blood, they were looking for DNA, right?
Found nothing.
If you look on the right-hand side, Jack 61, if you can blow that up a little bit, right? So they took a lot of swabs, and Culhane was preparing samples for DNA. Out of all the swabs that they did in the garage, they found no traces of Teresa Halbach's blood anywhere. And we'll talk about item FL in a second. They scoured the entire garage. They checked everywhere. They luminol treated it. They jackhammered it. They took a whole huge number of swabs. The irony is the only blood that they found on the floor of the garage belonged to Jack 61. You want to say
Stephen.
it? Who's
Stephen.
Okay. They tore, you can see on the ground the extensive damage they did to the garage. They were looking for the presence of blood, Teresa Halbach's blood. So what Kayla said, they took seriously. They were thinking, oh my God, did Teresa Halbach's blood sink into the concrete? Well, let's see if we can find it. And they took a ton of swabs. Not one swab contained her blood, her DNA. The only DNA they found belonged to Stephen, which then begs the question, what type of cleaning up did they actually do? Because if they're using bleach, paint thinner, gas, obviously they didn't do a very good job because Stephen's blood is there. Stephen's DNA is there, right? So despite extensive luminol treatment, despite tearing up the place, despite getting the concrete, the story that Kayla gave was just a story of a young girl. But it had a profound effect on what's going to happen to Brendan, right?
It did.
It did. Huge. So if we look at the next slide,
Hey,
what did the...
Doc, are we going to get into Adam FL? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, we are.
Well, I just
very
want to
briefly.
make
Very briefly.
right. But I just want to make mention for everybody to look at this photo. We've got it kind of pixelated, but still, you can see that entire everything in this garage is covered in dust. Covered. Okay, I just wanted to make mention of that. Now,
But now that you've got that picture there, that toolbox, see the black toolbox that was on the ground, that belonged to Stephen. And that toolbox on November the 6th, I proved it, was opened.
Yeah.
Which meant, how was a bullet going to go past the toolbox and underneath the green compressor? So Fassbender debunked himself.
Another magic bullet, Doc. No, I got.
He actually debunked himself, right? Because the toolbox, I thought maybe that toolbox belonged to the investigators. No, that was Stephen's toolbox when he was working on the Suzuki. He was taking the Suzuki apart. The toolbox was open right underneath where the green compressor is. There's no way that a bullet could go and bypass the toolbox and lodge underneath the green compressor.
Certainly not go through it. Just no way.
No. So if we look at the next slide, Jack 61, they found 2 bullet fragments, right? But only after questioning Brendan. They found item FK, which had no blood, no DNA. They couldn't even associate it with a weapon. And the investigators magically found item FL underneath the green compressor. Okay. And as we know, item FL contained Teresa Horbach's DNA. No blood, no skin, no tissue. But the problem with item FL is they had no bone shards and it contained shards of wood and red paint. There's no chance in hell that item FL struck Teresa in the skull, killing her. And item FL can easily be explained by a contamination event at the lab. And Culhane was notorious for contaminating samples. Yep. That's another story, not part of the narrative. But guys, you must understand, the investigators never found those bullet fragments prior to questioning Brendan. So the investigators had no idea. And to be honest, they still have no idea how Teresa Horbach died and where. Jack 61.
Oh, I completely agree. They don't, or if they do, they've never revealed that information to anyone.
No. And if we look at the next slide, this beautifully illustrates what Jack 61 has just been talking about. The next slide on the next page, we'll just wait for that one. Have a look at that, guys. That's item FL. And what do you notice is missing on item FL? Cement.
Dust-free. That's right. It's dust-free.
It's dust-free. It's clean. Even when Culhane looked at it, she said, I saw nothing on it. So it is highly, highly suspicious of how the hell this bullet fragment got underneath the green compressor. Remember, we're talking about November, December, January, February, March, months of that bullet fragment sitting on concrete dust, and it gave a robust genomic profile of Teresa Horbach. Not even a partial profile, a robust profile, that bullet fragment there. Right? And in the end, item FL, they abandoned it. They walked away from it because it wasn't the bullet that struck Teresa Horbach in the skull, killing her. In fact, that bullet's got nothing to do with Teresa Horbach, can easily be explained as a contamination event at her bench, Culhane's bench. Right? Unreal. So if we have a look at the next slide, this is where things get serious, right? So Kayla's talking about Stephen asking one of his cousins, in actual fact, it was Mike Osmondson, they had a joke about moving a body. Kayla then talks about blood seeping through concrete. Well, now, these two guys, Mark Wiegand and Tom Fassbender, who are both co-lead investigators, are going, we need to talk to Brendan again. What does he know? Right? Now, the problem is Fassbender and Wiegert used the Reid technique in order to interrogate Brendan, right? That was savage. And this notion that you have to use violence, harsh language, that's complete bogus. The Reid technique is a psychological technique that's fooled the best of the best. It's a psychological technique. Think about it, guys. Brendan Dassey had no legal guardian with him and had no legal representation. For Fassbender and Wiegert, this was a turkey shoot for them. They're adults. They've got a lot of experience. What they did to Brendan, don't worry, in another podcast, we're going to go through it step by step, is just mind-blowing. So, before we can understand what happened to Brendan next, we've got to go into the Reid technique, right? Cherie, do you see the next slide? We'll split this up. Do you see that, Cherie?
I see Mark and Tom. Is that the one you mean?
Oh, it's the next one. Do you see slide J2A?
You're lagging.
Not
It'll
yet.
pop in there.
Oh, you don't?
Not yet.
Okay. Shall I get Neverly? Do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
J2A. Can you start reading? These are the steps of the Reid technique. So, guys,
Sure.
we got to know this because when Fassbender and Wiegert interrogate Brendan, you need to know what they did. Let's go for it, guys.
9 steps of interrogation. The Reid technique's 9 steps of interrogation are as follows. 1. Direct confrontation. Advise the suspect that the evidence, crucial, the evidence has led the police to the individual as a suspect. Offer the person an early opportunity to explain why the offense took place. Number 2. Try to shift the blame away from the suspect to some other person or set of circumstances that prompted the suspect to commit the crime. That is, develop themes containing reasons that will psychologically justify or excuse the crime. Oh, you didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
It was an accident.
Themes may be developed or changed to find one to which the accused is most responsive. 3. Try to minimize the frequency of suspect denials. 4. At this point, the accused will often give a reason why he or she did not or could not commit the crime. Try to use this to move towards the acknowledgement of what they did.
Okay.
Bloody hell.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. So these are psychological techniques, right? For someone like Brendan Dassey, being intellectually challenged, he was no match.
It's kryptonite.
He was no match for what they were doing. And remember, they tag teamed. When Brendan was questioned initially, he was tag teamed by Baldwin, by O'Neill, then Baldwin, Skorlinski, and now tag team again by Fassbender and Wiegert. So it was always a tandem. So that meant that they were fresh. They went out, the interrogation room, came back in. That's deliberate. They do that deliberately. And Brendan is by himself, right? So it's completely shocking what they did. So let's continue. Cherie, do you see the next slide, J2B?
Yes, I do. Okay. Number 5, reinforce sincerity to ensure that the suspect is receptive. Number 6, the suspect will become quieter and listen. Move the theme of the discussion toward offering alternatives. If the suspect cries at this point, infer guilt.
Infer guilt.
Unbelievable.
Number 7, pose the alternative question, giving 2 choices for what happened, one more socially acceptable than the other. The suspect is expected to choose the easier option, but whichever alternative the suspect chooses, guilt is admitted.
Guilt is admitted.
As stated earlier, there is always a third option, that is to maintain that they did not commit the crime. Number 8, lead the suspect to repeat the admission of guilt in front of witnesses and develop corroborating information to establish the validity of the confession. Number 9, document the suspect's admission of confession and have him or her prepare a recorded statement, audio, video, or written.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Can I read?
Unbelievable.
Can I just read one out again?
Number 8.
Sure.
Number
well,
8.
whatever.
Number 8. I'll read it again. This is crucial. This is what Kratz failed to do when he did the March 2nd press conference. I'll read it again. Lead the suspect to repeat the admission of guilt in front of witnesses and develop corroborating information to establish the validity of the confession. I'm going to go through my panel. I'm going to go and ask in chat, did the investigators do this with Brendan's confession? Corroborate what he said. Jack 61.
Not at all. Not at all.
Neverly.
No, not at all. And this point number 8, lead the suspect to repeat the admission of guilt in front of witnesses. This reminds me of my cousin Vinny, when the accused, what's his name? That guy, Ralph something Macchio.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
said,
no, yeah.
I shot the clerk. I shot the clerk. In Karen Reid's trial, I did it. I did it. I did it. Yeah.
Correct. So would you agree? No corroborating evidence at all?
No, none.
No? Okay. Cherie, what about yourself?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Correct. So, no, they didn't. So, in essence, they broke their own rules of the Reid technique.
Well, Nan's Life 7 says they did ask him to tell his mom what he did.
Yes. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. They all had a strategy. The whole thing was an entire strategy. And remember, the ultimate betrayal was by Kaczynski and O'Kelly against his own client. Okay. And there's been many research papers written about what Kaczynski and O'Kelly did. And people in the legal profession are thoroughly embarrassed and disgusted. But there's one big problem with the Reid technique, a huge problem. Jack 61, can we have a look at the next page, please? All right, Jack 61, would you like to read that out? Here's the problem with the Reid technique.
Absolutely. The Reid technique of psychologically manipulating people through trickery and deceit may lead to false confessions. One problem with tricks and deceit is that both guilty and innocent suspects become more willing to confess. There is no strategy that motivates only guilty suspects to talk. As a result, the more successful a strategy is in eliciting confessions from guilty suspects, the more likely it is that this strategy will also produce false confessions from innocent suspects. Law enforcement agents are permitted to lie during an interrogation.
Okay, so here's the problem, right? Someone like Brendan Dassey, because of the use of deceit and trickery, is liable to give a false confession, right? So the Reid technique can't distinguish between someone telling the truth and someone lying, right? So they'll both talk, and that's exactly what Brendan was doing. Brendan was getting deeper and deeper into trouble. Why? Because of the questions that Fassbender and Wiegert, not only Fassbender and Wiegert, but the other interrogators were asking Brendan. He was being led into a false confession, and we'll show you. And Neverly, did you have a comment?
No, thank you.
Okay, Jack 61, did you have a comment?
Just a brief one. And given everything you just talked about and this little summary here, the suggestibility of Brendan is at play here, 100%.
100% correct. Yep. So if we look at the next slide, I remember Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen, they went on a tour talking about the use of the Reid technique and how it can elicit false confessions. And they basically said that there are 3 pathways that can lead to a false confession. And I could read this one out. There's a so-called misclassification error. Subset, why did people suspect the defendant? That all came about through the interviews that were done by Detective O'Neill, Baldwin, Skolinski, and Baldwin. They were asking questions, and Brendan Dassey was basically admitting that he had seen Teresa, had seen the RAV4, had seen Stephen. Then he goes and admits that he was at the burn pit with Stephen when there was a fire going, and he helped his uncle Stephen at the burn pit. So hence, the spotlight is firmly on Brendan. They're going, oh my God, is this kid a witness? Was he a co-conspirator? The so-called coercion error, right? So how was the defendant convinced to confess? And what you'll see throughout the interrogations is the use of superior knowledge. Brendan, we already know, right? And they were lying to him. They didn't know. But to Brendan, he's thinking, oh my God, they know everything, right? So it's the coercion error.
They,
61.
Yeah, they kept saying, Brendan, look, we know everything. We just need to hear it from you. They said that to him, I don't know how many times. It was a lot.
Yes. The critical thing there, Jack 61, is we need to hear it from you.
That's right.
Right? We know what happened. We just need to hear it from you. We need to get the narrative. Once they've got the narrative, the confession from Brendan, they'll use it against him. Neverly.
I am so sorry.
Did you unmute?
Mute.
Okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries. And the final thing is the contamination error, right? How did the defendant know exactly what to say? And the answer, of course, is Fassbender and Uyghur were fact-feeding Brendan Dassey.
He was also guessing.
He was also correct. He was also guessing as well, right? So they were giving all the important facts of the narrative to Brendan, and Brendan was giving his version of events, right? And he even admitted that Brendan kept on guessing, right? But they hobbled together a confession, and don't worry, we're going to go through the line by line, the whole lot of how Brendan ended up getting arrested. That's the scary bit. All right. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide, this is a really interesting analysis. And this is due to the interrogation by O'Neill and Baldwin. Neverly, do you see the slide?
Yes, I do, Dr. Silkman.
Jack 61, are you able to just expand a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to blow that up.
Yeah, I have it on a different device, so I can read it.
Okay. This very, very clever with how this went down. So let's go for it, Neverly.
Okay. Despite O'Neill's telling Dassey at the outset that he was not under arrest and was free to leave at any time, those pro forma disclaimers, which many lower courts find persuasive, are worthless at the moment when confrontational questioning began, or, in other words, when Reid interrogation began. Detectives used a handful of Reid's steps to push Dassey into changing his story, most notably directly confronting Dassey, step 1, developing a theme by encouraging Dassey to think about the girl, quote unquote, step 2, minimizing his involvement by telling him he will not go to jail, step 2, and overcoming Dassey's denials, step 3, among other Reid tactics. Reid aside, the car Dassey was driving had been seized and towed away. Dassey was therefore dependent on law enforcement for transportation. When considered alongside Dassey's educational background and the fact that Dassey was questioned in relay fashion by 2 officers in the backseat of a squad car with closed doors, it is clear that no reasonable person in Dassey's shoes would feel free to terminate the encounter and leave.
So potentially they entrapped him. They entrapped him.
Absolutely. Plus, he was underage. Did he have a driver's license? Did he have a
No.
credit card or a
No, he
debit
was
card? Did he have a
no.
cell phone?
No,
Absolutely
he was learning
not.
to drive, but he didn't have a car.
Yeah. Or cell phone, driver's license, and credit card. Who is he going to call for help to come pick me
Nobody.
up? Yeah.
Nobody. And it was law enforcement after the questioning that drove both Brian and Brendan back. So potentially Brendan could have said, I don't want to talk to you. He would have had to have walked back with Brian because they stopped the car, they confiscated the car. So
Yeah.
Brendan thought,
And it, sorry.
yeah, keep going.
And if he, let's say he goes, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to leave because they told him he could. If he opened the door and there was, let's say, Skralinski or O'Neill was on the other side, he could have pushed the door back and he could have said assaulting the officer, resisting arrest, and just make a mountain.
But
Worse
yeah,
for
I
him.
agree, because that's what happened to Nick Hillary.
Yeah.
But how about this? How about if Brendan said, I don't want to talk to you, Detective O'Neill, Baldwin. How do you know that Skralinski wouldn't have said to him, oh, Brendan, what about those 15, 16 kids on that school bus? The bus driver said, you saw Teresa Hallbart. Don't say that Skralinski wouldn't have said that, because he would have. Would you guys agree?
He would have.
He would have said exactly that.
Yeah. One more question, Brandon. You can leave, but answer me just this one question. That's what they did to Nick Hillary.
Yes.
A former military grown-ass educated adult.
Yes.
One more question.
It's also interesting that Brian's interview was apparently not recorded. Why not? They recorded Brendan.
Yeah, correct. Because Brian would have said, I wasn't home, went to my girlfriend's house, I saw nothing.
Right? Don't know anything, right?
But Brendan could have said the same thing too. Brendan could have said, me and my brother, we got off the school bus, we went straight home, saw nothing. The changing was the bus driver. So, Neverly, would you like to read part 2?
Sure.
Yep.
Admittedly, the state never sought to use Dassey's November 6 statements as direct evidence of Dassey's guilt at trial because, by then, it had Dassey's detail-laden March 1st, 2006 confession to work with. But during the trial's 4th day, the state introduced audio from the November 6 interview in order to ask Detective O'Neill about his impressions of Dassey's demeanor, which is bullshit.
Yep.
During his testimony, O'Neill said that Dassey had, quote, an inner struggle, end of quote, and that in his opinion, Dassey was hiding something, quote unquote. Because those comments were designed to provide the jury more context to why investigators conducted subsequent interrogations of Dassey, the November 6 interrogation stands more as a cautionary tale for use in the classroom. Prospective prosecutors and defense attorneys alike can clearly see how knowledge of the Reid technique informs Miranda's attachment, and more precisely, when it should attach.
So there's been a lot of legal arguments. Now, I know that I'm not sure whether Travis is in chat or not, but there's been a lot of legal debates whether Brendan Dassey's rights were not properly served or paid attention to. There's big legal ramifications here. But O'Neill, during Brendan Dassey's trial, said he was hiding something, right? But Brendan is a shy, introverted kid. Brendan Dassey was just simply being Brendan Dassey, right?
And Dr. Silkman, I'm watching interrogations left and right, up and down while I'm at work, on the walk, or whatever, listening to it. And this is a Reid technique. It's a playbook. They were trained on this. And all of these steps, they enforce them every single time. And you know the physical touch that they do? as well, how they put their hand on the knee, shoulder, or
Yes.
whatever. That's
Yes.
also a part of the Reid technique.
Yes,
You know,
it is.
and then it's like, I can see something's troubling you. Come on, I can see it in your eyes. It will be a relief. Just say it. You know, they do it
Correct.
to every single person that's in that room. It's fucking
Correct.
scary.
It's very, very intimidating. And remember, they even asked Brendan, is Teresa Horbach cold? You know, her
Yeah.
family is missing her. She needs her medication. Can
Yeah.
you help out
Think
Brendan?
about her.
Yep. Think about her. Think about her family. And if Brendan is completely innocent, he's got no idea. And as a young kid, of course, he wants to help. But how is he going to help if he's got no knowledge? Right? Now, Jack61, do you actually have that little video clip?
Yeah, Doc, I do, and it's
Is it
a,
going
it's
to
a
be
short clip.
it's going to be tricky to play it?
Oh yeah, I'm going to pop it up.
Okay.
Just a couple of short things to add before I
Yes.
play this clip. It's from
Yes,
Cam,
please.
and it's of Kayla, but it's a short clip. But personally, I would like to have had that entire. I feel like there was so much more that she said during this little section that they cut out. That's just my opinion, but I'm going to pop it up right now,
Yep.
and then we can talk about it. So,
Yep. Awesome.
Here we
So
go.
this little
After
clip's
Brendan
about
was arrested,
Kayla.
actually, we interviewed Kayla again, and that would have been on March, I believe it was March 7th of 2006.
Mark Wiegert and Tom Fossbender. It was very overwhelming if I would tell them that I didn't know, or that I didn't say that, or that Brendan didn't talk to me about something. They would tell me that I'm lying and that I need to start telling the truth. And then I just basically looked at them and, why are you trying to interview me? Like, I don't get it.
Okay. Jack61, you got any comments?
I got a lot of comments. They were basically treating her the way they treated Brendan. You're lying.
Yes.
You need to tell us the truth. And you can pick this. Not everyone's listened to Brendan's calls, but they're calls within Brendan's calls that are not just Brendan and Barb. There's Brendan and Kayla. There's other information, and she said that they took what she told them and twisted it. There's no way Brendan lost 40 freaking pounds. No way.
No,
The
didn't he lose like 5 pounds or something like that?
Right, but they leave out the part that this girl that Brendan was clearly in love with, this young love, had broke up with him, said he was too heavy, too fat.
Yep.
And so he was really upset about it. He was crying about it. But they took that as to like, well, he's hiding something. He saw all this horrific shit, so he must be hiding something. He's really all this time later, 4 or 5 months later, he's reliving it. Come on, man. It's so bad.
Correct. 100% correct. So in other words, they actually used the Reid technique on Kayla as well. Remember what Kayla said? They were saying that I was lying, and they only took what they wanted to hear. But if we look at the next picture, Jack61, J6A, what Kayla wrote about Stephen was incredibly scathing. Or just wait till that comes up. I'm not sure whether you can blow that picture up. I tried to read what Kayla wrote. Would anyone like to have a go at trying to read what she wrote about Stephen? Anyone want to have a go? Because the spelling is shocking. Who would like to have a go?
I can try.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's go for it.
March 7th, 2006. That Brendan told me that he saved the body parts of trees in the fire pit behind, Teresa probably, behind Stephen, grown. Brendan got the mail and brought it to him, and he say a chair in the bedroom. Then Brendan walked out of the house, and he had heard screaming in house. When I tried to talk to him at Ashley's birthday party, and I asked him to talk to, and he did not want to talk to me about it. I think that S should stay Oh, Stephen should stay in jail or prison. I do not like him at all. I really think that Brendan did something and he got forced. I hate Stephen a lot. Teresa was pinned up. PPS, I hope he rots in hell.
Okay. So you can't get anything worse than that, right? But notice what Kayla wrote, that according to what Brendan told her, he saw Teresa Horbach pinned up in a what? Chair. Pinned up in a chair.
Yep.
Not the bed, but pinned up in a chair. It's, again, a completely different narrative, right? So they put Kayla on the stand, and Fallon spoke to Kayla. Now, let's go through what happened during the trial. Jack 61, would you like to read out Fallon's part?
Yep.
The questions. And Neverly, would you like to read Kayla's part, which are the answers? This in Brendan Dassey's trial. Let's go for it.
Question. All right. What did Brendan tell you about the fire? You'll have to pull the microphone a little closer so we can hear you.
He didn't tell me anything. I kind of made up the statement. I'm sorry.
All right. What did you make up? Tell us what you said you made up.
That he seen body parts in there? I didn't. He didn't see it. He didn't tell me anything like that, or he didn't see Teresa's body or anything like that.
You also told the officers that Brendan told you he saw Teresa alive and pinned up, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. And you love Brendan, right?
Yes, very much.
And you wouldn't say anything like that to get him into trouble, would you?
No, not really.
All right. But yet you told the officers that those were the conversations you had with Brendan. Isn't that right?
Yes.
All right. You told the officers that Brendan told you he had seen Teresa pinned up in Stephen's trailer, didn't you?
Yeah, we'll continue. We'll continue.
I don't see her answer.
Do you see it now? This is J6C.
Yeah, but it goes back to the question.
Yeah, no. There's another question. There's a follow-up question by there was this big interjection and objection, and then the judge said, "Okay, ask the question again." So, Jack 61.
Yep. Okay. And in the written statement that I just showed you, you reported that Brendan told you he had seen body parts in the fire on Halloween, right?
Yes, but that's not true.
All right. And you also told the officers in a separate conversation that day that you had seen, or that Brendan had seen Teresa alive in Stephen's trailer.
Yes.
All right. And that she was pinned up in a chair.
Yes, but that's not true.
All right. Now you're saying today you made that up.
Yes.
All right. So you're telling us you made up something to get Brendan into trouble.
Not really. I was just really confused about everything.
That's it. Now, can you see the shit show involving 2 children?
Yep.
And her cousin is in jail for life, potentially for just made up bullshit. Any comments?
That's right. And that's why I personally put the onus of this on Candy. That's
Me too.
Jack's personal opinion.
Me
I can't
too,
prove
Jack.
it.
I'm told, yeah. Yeah, because it makes no sense. It's vicious. It's hateful. And she, at that level, and we saw her, how she presented herself in court. We saw this letter. I don't think that she would be able to make that up by herself.
No.
Yeah.
She was young. She's younger than Brendan. She's 14 or 15.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was younger than Brendan.
And
Correct.
it was beautiful to see Fallon just capitulate.
Yeah.
Oh, he just walked away. He
Yeah.
realized that that was it. He was never going to get an answer from Kayla.
And
No.
had
But-
he continued, it would have been worse for them, for the prosecution.
And he knew it.
Which is exactly what would have happened, in my opinion, had Brendan Dassey been called up to Stephen's trial. Brendan would have said the same thing. I made it all up. It just would have been a disaster. But oh my God, did you see the interview with Candace Owen? What Candace Owen said about this? Oh, Kayla did a 180. Who was threatening Kayla? Why did
Yes.
Kayla suddenly change her narrative?
Jesus.
Who was manipulating Kayla?
Right.
And
Well, who
Stephen's in
manipulated her?
jail. How's Stephen going to manipulate Kayla?
Right. Who manipulated her in the first place? And again,
Yes.
to me, this all stems back to the Marie thing. All of it. Because what were they doing to him? It kind of gets left out. What did Baldwin and Wiegert do to Marie? It threatened her.
Yes.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
because she would not say anything. Anything happened. They didn't have anything from over a year earlier and closed the investigation. And they eventually threatened her after 4 months of her saying nothing happened. And
Yeah,
she-
they
I
went
guess
after her repeatedly. Yeah.
Like
they
did
did.
with Jody and Jody as well.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yep. So it is just horrendous. 2 young kids, 2 children, all this trouble. And then Kayla recants in court, but it obviously made no difference. So what does Kratz do about all of this? We're nearly finished, guys. Let's have a look what Kratz said in his opening statement about Brendan Dassey and confessions, right? Who would like to read this one out?
I can.
Yep, let's go for it. So this is Kratz.
You're also going to hear, though, that there's a difference between interviews and interrogations. Interrogations are designed for suspects. They're not designed for witnesses. And you're going to hear in this case, in fact, you're going to hear a lot in this case about interrogations and the interrogative process, about the process of asking questions and the process of obtaining truthful information from suspects. You're going to hear that confessing to a crime, and in fact, the most serious crime is murder, but confessing to any crime is an unnatural act. It goes against a human's feeling of self-preservation, okay? That should make sense to everybody, and the evidence is going to show that. That is difficult to have somebody admit to a very, very serious crime. And so there are techniques that are developed to encourage suspects. Again, these are interrogations, these aren't interviews, but to encourage suspects to provide truthful information. You're going to hear about those techniques, that those techniques include some kind of an accusation that the person's not telling the truth. And in every confession, every admission that Mr. Wiegert and perhaps other witnesses will tell you about, they always start with a denial. I wasn't involved in the case.
So this is truly remarkable. If you notice that Kratz never talks about the Reid technique, and what he's saying is that it's impossible, if someone is innocent of a crime, that they would never admit that they had committed the crime. So he's saying that the innocent don't confess. Brendan Dassey confessed because he's guilty. Kratz has totally forgotten that the Reid technique, what does the Reid technique solicit in children like Brendan?
This is the statement. That's what
Correct.
they're looking for. They're looking for a statement.
Correct. And they elicit false confessions. Kratz is saying that's all bullshit. That doesn't take place. Right? So he then, sorry, Jack 61.
I was going to say there at the end, he said he wasn't involved in the in I guess the interrogations or whatever, and I guess technically that's true, but he is the one that had to have allowed the May 13th interview
Yes, he did.
next coercion session with Brendan without his freaking lawyer, and I'm
Correct.
I'm beyond in my mind how that could happen, and nothing happened to him. Kaczynski gets thrown off the case. But Kratz is the one
Yes.
that had to approve it. He's the prosecutor. He's in control of
Yep.
all of it.
Correct. So Kratz is basically saying, hey, what Fassbender and Uyghur did, they did nothing wrong. Brendan is guilty. There's no way he goes against self-preservation. So in other words, even though Brendan always initially said, I did nothing wrong, what did they keep on telling Brendan? What was the key thing they kept on telling Brendan? Even though Brendan said, I did nothing wrong, what did they kept on telling Brendan? You are
lying.
You're lying. So let's have a look at the next slide, guys. We're nearly finished for today's podcast. Look what Kratz kept on saying. We'll just wait till the next one comes up. And Neverly, do you see that one?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to read this one?
Sure. You'll also hear testimony about how guilty people, that is, people who really do commit crimes, how they hear that very phrase, it's all right, we already know what happened, how they hear that differently than somebody who's innocent or somebody who may not have committed a crime, all right? So you can kind of figure it out yourselves. I mean, jurors, you'll be able to figure this out and the evidence will help you with that. But guilty people, when they hear we already know what happened, will tend to make admissions. Innocent people who weren't involved at all, who hear we already know what happened, will think, I will think, good, then you're going to know I wasn't involved. And so how it plays on, and you'll need to kind of understand the difference in the dynamic.
Who would like to comment in that?
Yeah, I want to scream in this one. Innocent people,
he knows that's not right.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
Yep, it's the total opposite. If you're innocent, you wouldn't confess to a crime, right? Right? Except Kratz must have forgotten about the next case. Let's have a look at the next diagram. Let's have a look at the next figure. We're nearly done, guys. So Kratz is in court saying, nah, there's no way that an innocent person would confess to a crime. Yet, I think one of the most quintessential crimes that illustrates the evilness of the Reid technique is what happened to Matt Livers and Nick Sampson, right? It illustrates perfectly what the Reid technique can do. Now, Matt Livers, he was 28 years old at the time. He was immature, regarded as being immature, had a low intellect. His IQ was 63. He was interrogated for hours on end by 2 investigators using the Reid technique. And when Matt Livers was interrogated, he kept on saying, I wasn't involved in this. I wasn't involved in this crime. What was the crime? It was the brutal murder of his auntie and uncle in their own house at nighttime in their bedroom. Both of them were shot in the head at point blank range.
With a shotgun.
With a shotgun. Blew their heads off. And they were convinced, the investigators were convinced that Matt had done it. Why? Because you see the guy on the left, David Kofod, he's a CSI guru. He planted blood in one of the cousins' cars. He planted Wayne Stock's blood inside the car. Why? Because he wanted to ensure a conviction.
To help out.
To help out and get a conviction. And David Kofod went to prison for evidence tampering. This notion that you can't plant blood is bullshit. He planted the victim's blood that was in the bedroom in a car. So coagulation, bullshit. He got a positive test, presumptive positive test for hemoglobin. They did DNA test, and voila, Wayne Stock's blood was present in the cousin's car. How on earth did that blood get there? The answer is it got planted by COVID. Matt Livers, after hours of questioning, and Matt Livers is very much like an older version of Brendan, he finally admitted to killing a double homicide of his auntie and uncle. The investigator said to him, "We looked at the blood spatter on the wall and there was like a shadow effect. There was somebody with you, wasn't there?" Without even being prompted, "Yeah, my cousin, Nick." So these two guys got arrested and were going to go to prison for life for a double murder, and both men were not even there in the same location, and they had alibi witnesses. To make matters worse, guys, the two people that did the murder, who said it was just us two. The detectives refused to believe that it was only those two youths from Wisconsin.
That's right.
They refused to believe the killers, and they were trying to implicate, no, you had help from Matt and Nick, even though there was zero forensic evidence. Is this ringing a bell? Zero forensic evidence tying Matt and Nick to the crime. And the only thing that tied it was the blood that was planted by David Kofod.
And that detective, correct me if I'm remembering this correctly, Doc, that detective to this day still believes Matt, he still believes that they were involved.
Yep.
He refuses to let it go.
Yep. And
doubling down, exactly. And where do we see this? In this case.
Fassbender and Wiegert doing exactly the same, and Kratz. So there are many murders, rapes, exactly like this, where the Reid technique solicits a confession. And you know what's remarkable? The day after, remember Jack 61, remember guys, Matt Livers goes and talks to the detective and says, "You realize I just told you what you wanted to hear."
Yeah, wanted out of the room.
He recanted.
Yep, all of it.
And that recantation DVD wasn't given to the defense.
That's right.
Until it was found later, because Nick Sampson was smart enough and got an attorney, whereas Matt was all by himself, right? So in the end, that to let both guys go, they got the two killers who confessed. They were from Wisconsin. They're on a crime spree. It's a real bizarre story written up by Farak in his book.
Yeah,
brilliant book.
Great
but
book.
It goes to show, guys, hadn't they caught the real killers, hadn't they found out that Kofod planted the blood, Nick Sampson was sentenced to die by a thing in the electric chair. He was sentenced to death.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and that ring that got found in the kitchen that they missed.
Correct.
That was another great.
Yeah, the ring.
Correct.
From traveling criminals.
Correct. So the forensic evidence all pointed out to the two killers. Nothing pointed to these two guys, but both were arrested, and one of them was Nick was sentenced to death. Right. So is this ringing true with what's happened to Brendan? We haven't even started his interrogations yet.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Right. And that's why Brendan's story needs to be told step by step, because what happened to Matt Livers exactly happened to Brendan. And to this day, as Jack 61 said, the detective still believes in the guilt of both men.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And there was a civil suit, and I think they received between $5 and $6 million because of a wrongful conviction. It's terrifying. Now, Jack 61, this is so bad that if you look on the next page, there's an actual website dedicated to false confessions. All the individuals that have been falsely accused of murder, rape, you name it, and subsequently been released because forensic evidence proved that they weren't involved. The statistics are so bad, guys, that they believe that there's 50,000 Americans, fellow American citizens in prison today, serving long jail sentences, and they're innocent. False confession. And there's a high percentage of individuals who are in prison who've got low IQs, who underwent the Reid technique, confessed, or as Jack 61 eloquently pointed out, did a plea deal. What do you want? Life in prison or 10 years?
And there you go.
There you go, right? So there's an actual website dedicated. But here's the kicker. We have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. We're nearly finished. The police didn't receive immunity for what they did, and they got sued, right? Now imagine if Brendan Dassey or Stephen Avery gets released, could they potentially be sued for wrongful conviction? And that's why you'll see to this day, and in convicting a murderer, Tom Fassbender, Wicket is gone. You don't hear anything from him.
And Pagel.
Fassbender goes, and Pagel. Remember what Fassbender said? I don't believe it was a false confession. He said the truth. Because he damn knows that if Brendan gets exonerated and released, that's what's going to happen to him.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly what the lawsuit, the civil lawsuit, is going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. That kid has spent, 18 years already in prison for something he never did. For something he never did. And that's the scary thing.
Until now. That's right.
Yep. And now you've seen the words of Kratz in court. If Brendan was innocent, he would never confess. The kid time and time said, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And they kept on telling him. And where the shit show began was with what O'Kelly said. You want to spend the rest of your life in prison, or do you want to have a family one day? And remember what he told his mum? Don't worry, we're going to go through that phone call as well. He said, Mum, they said I was going to stay in prison for 90 years if I said I'm innocent. If I said I did it, I'll get out in 20. Right? So the kid, like Neville said, is like plasticine. He got manipulated. And in the end, he is now sitting in prison to potentially 2048 for something he never did. Right? And the forensic evidence does not back up his story. All right. So guys, let's finish today's podcast with a summary. So look what's happened to Brendan in only 2 interrogations, right? I'll read it out. Brendan Dassey was asked 27 follow-up questions by Special Agent Skulinski and Investigator Baldwin on November the 10th, 2005. Special Agent Skulinski had informed Brendan Dassey what he believed had occurred to Teresa Halbach at Stephen Avery's burn pit on October 31st, 2005. It's clear that Skulinski wasn't taking any of this nonsense about the fire being on November the 1st, November the 2nd. No. Now, here's the problem for Brendan. Brendan Dassey had admitted being at the burn pit and helping out Stephen Avery. Skulinski's putting 2 and 2 together and going, mate, either you're a witness or you're a co-conspirator. What is it? And that was the job of Fassbender and Wiegert to sort it out. Okay? Now, in the meantime, Brendan Dassey's own cousin, Kayla, who's only a child herself, She went to a school counselor, and Kayla was very concerned on several matters, right? About the joke, the so-called joke of hiding a body. Can blood seep up through concrete? And this was a worry, big concern. And also Brendan Dassey's recent behavior. He was crying, he was lonely, he lost a little bit of weight. Hey, how about if Brendan was actually missing his uncle? Remember what Brendan Dassey said to O'Neill? Oh, you want to take away my uncle again for 18 years? Remember that, Jig 61?
I do.
Remember what he said? You want to take him away again? So clearly he was concerned. So what Brendan was thinking happened again. His uncle got arrested, right? All right. So Brendan Dassey now was about to be interrogated using the Reid technique by Fassbender and Wiegert. And the final point is this. Both investigators wanted to know what Brendan Dassey knew about the events on October the 31st, 2005. Brendan was like a worm dangling from a hook with a shark underneath, and Brendan is like that mouse on the mouse trap. That's why I used it as an image to show how they coerced him out, and he's now on the mouse trap eating the cheese. It's just simply shocking, but guys, we have to tell his story. Thank you very much. All right. So guys, I hope that you've enjoyed our second podcast in the series. From now on, we're now going to go hone in on the interrogations. We're going to read them all out. We're going to summarize what happened on February the 27th, but we're going to read line by line the March 1st interrogation. It's going to be tough going, but we need to do it to see what happened. All right, guys, what did you think of the presentation and people in chat? What did you think overall?
Excellent. Another good foundation leading into these various different events that occurred, and we got to do it. It's hard, but it's got to be done.
And look, I think we were fair. We didn't sugarcoat anything. We read it all out. We showed all the primary documents, and that's it. So now the trap is definitely set, and we're going to talk about what happened to Brendan on the 27th of February, the press conference, and then, of course, his interrogation on March the 1st. All right.
I think it's interesting, too, before we get into the questions, Doc, and everyone, I think it's interesting that they talked to Kayla on the 20th, and it was so important they waited a week to go talk to Brendan.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if it was what they said, they would have been there that day or the day after, not wait a week. So what was going on during that freaking week?
Exactly right. Exactly right. But really, you'll see after the 27th of February, all hell broke loose.
Oh, yeah.
All hell broke loose, and we'll do it step by step. The dominoes fell. For Brendan, he was gone. He was gone. Yeah. March 1st was merely the entrapment. But what happened after the 27th and on the 27th, all hell broke loose.
Yeah,
Neville, did you have a comment? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Dr. Silkman. I feel like we're doing a case study over here, and that you spoil us with your expertise, experience. I know that you enjoy it, but we cannot take away. We should give the credit where credit belongs, which is to you, because this is more than full time, and you just whip it. It seems to us that you just whip it like in half an hour, which is not true. So I just wanted to thank you.
Takes a lot of time to put
it. Well,
yeah, just to put the mere slides, in the way that he does. It's a lot of work, let alone to do the research and to corroborate all of that. I said it. Corroborate. Yeah.
Corroborate.
Yeah.
I think, thank you very much. we've been working together on this, but because I'm retired now, I've spent a huge amount of time putting this together. And what you find is when you're looking at the literature, there's a lot of gaps that people don't talk very much about.
Right.
They really tend to neglect November 6th, November 10th, but they're the foundation points, right? Remember, the detectives, the interrogators, the investigators, they're all working together. They're comparing notes. They're finding who's the weakest link, right? They talked to Kayla. They tried to talk to Jody, and Jody was basically telling him, bugger off. And I'll prove it to you because she actually wrote that in a letter. Leave me alone. I've had enough of this stuff. But they were working on her. Unfortunately, the next person down the rank, the next cab off the rank was Brendan Dassey.
Yep.
And unfortunately, with Brendan, he put himself there.
Yep.
So they wanted to find out, okay, mate, what do you know? Oh, so not only do you know all of this, you've now implicated yourself, right? And it's truly shocking. And if you don't think it can happen to you, think again. Happen even to smart people with university degrees, you name it. The Reid technique is designed to take you apart. It's a psychological test. Now, you think about it, right? If you've ever encountered a narcissist or someone that's gaslighting you, they're masters at it. They are masters at it. They pick out your weak points, they tear you apart. Brendan was intellectually limited. He never had the nous to say, I'm not saying a word unless my mum's here. I'm not saying a word unless I get a public attorney, a public defender. I want advice. No, Brendan opened himself up. He's only a kid. He's a child. And he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have some questions?
We do. We do have questions. And this goes back pretty early when we started, but I think we can knock most of these out pretty quickly. So I'll put them up and have one of the ladies read. Neverly?
Yes, dear.
Anthony's
you want me
question.
to read the questions? Yeah, sure.
Please.
First of all, I would like to acknowledge Under Your Scars. She sent
Ooh.
us a $10 super sticker where she says, Happy
Thank you
birthday,
so much.
and thank you for all of this.
How
Thank you
nice.
so
I love your
much.
channel and more need to listen. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where were we? Okay. Question number 1 from our friend Anthony Hills. Anthony, you rock. Question: confirm whether Strang and Buting ever set their eyes on the rap.
They did.
They did.
They did. Yeah, it's in queso. They did.
Yep.
I think that's all they did. They
As far as we
didn't.
know, they didn't take any photos or.
No. But they went to see the RAV. Yeah, it's documented.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Next question comes from our friend JJ Fogg Jr. Did they show Brendan a picture of a dead body and told him they found it on salvage yard?
Not as far as I'm aware. The only thing that they would have shown to Brendan, I know that Kelly did. He had the pictures all laid out. He had the burn pit. I'm not sure whether he had the box of bones, but certainly the burn pit. Yep.
Yeah, as far as I know, that he was never shown a photo of a dead body that I'm aware of.
No.
Okay. Next question.
Comes from Anthony Hills. Confirm whether Strang and Buting ever turned the magic key on the rap. I love the way Anthony approaches the subject.
Not as
like
far as
Chinese water torture,
yeah,
drip
not as
by
far as I'm
drip.
aware. No, the only person who did that is Colhane. She put the key in the door, opened the door, put it in the engine, turned it over, but of course the battery was disconnected, but it clicked over.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Xenia, hey everybody. This lady is very special to my heart because we speak the same language. We come from the same region, which is awesome. You don't see that very often. So
Apparently she's my age too.
Yeah, and she's fun. She says, so the ilium bone and the fragments of teeth have been really found on the 8th of November. So there's a follow-up question, maybe?
Yeah.
So 3 days after the rag was found.
On the 8th.
Oh, okay.
Allegedly, that's when they did the sieving of the burn pit. And that was done by Earl, the crime lab guys, Sturdivant, Jost, and I think Strauss was there too.
Yep.
So that box of bones is allegedly from the burn pit that was sifted on November the 8th and handed over to Bennett. And that's when he said there was the presence of the ilium bone. But notice there was no muscle tissue.
Yep.
There was no item BZ. And that's really bizarre because that should have been retained on the sifter. They found it allegedly in the tarp.
2 days later.
One of the biggest, 2 days later, that's one of the big, some of the biggest fragments allegedly went through the sifter. And it's hard to believe that someone picked up an obvious bone and threw it on the tarp, because the whole idea was if it looks like a bone or something of importance, put it in the box. Yeah, it's
right.
Bizarre. Brilliant work by Duke.
It is. Okay, next question.
I love the name ilium. It's such a cute word. Okay. From Nan's Life 7. Hey, Nan. She says, the PAP that is under a gentleman's agreement. Question, why was this agreement even allowed? Yes, great question.
Good question.
Essentially, I read all this. I did a presentation on it. Essentially, they didn't want the person in the Bellin Hospital to come on the stand and say, yeah, I hand-delivered the pap smear slides to Fassbender. That was it.
So they stipulated to it in the judge's chambers or whatever.
Yep. And they said, yeah, we agree. So in other words, they didn't have to call that person to say, yeah, I gave. But what is missing are the reports.
Yeah.
From the pap smear slides, because apparently I think there were 4 slides and there were accompanying reports.
Yeah, 3 pages.
Reports. Yeah, we haven't seen the reports.
This was very upsetting to me when I first came to this case, because I saw Kratz for what he is, like, straight away. And when I learned that there was a gentleman's agreement, which is basically a handshake, like, okay, we're not going to fight about this. We're going to agree that this is what it is. I was livid. However, over the years, you learn so much more, you kind of zoom out 40,000 feet and you see the whole picture of what's happening,
it happens a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
It happens a lot.
And to this day, I believe that Buting and Strang were so overwhelmed with the case, the nature of the case, the political nature of the case as well. They ran out of money or running out of money, and the time and the amount of work. And also, I think they couldn't, because they're decent men, they couldn't even fathom the level of snake oil salesmanship that was going on over there.
And deception.
Deception, exactly. So,
and the most devastating one, if I could just point out, is Veely agreeing to not put Veely on the stand.
Yeah.
That was a huge mistake. Huge mistake.
Yeah. But they were misdirected and believed it. Why would
Brendan's computer?
Right. I mean, the prosecutor tells you there's nothing here. I mean,
correct.
But there was.
And then he was mocking him. He goes,
mocked him.
You shouldn't believe me.
Yep. They were mocked because they believed Kratz.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really, I mean, what's the standard? I mean, it's one thing to lie to a hardened criminal, try to get something out of them about a murder case or, sexual assault or something of that nature, but to not be truthful to the defense, that's really bad. It's not good. So anyway, all right. Next question from Danny Brewers fan.
All right. Well, first of all, Dr. Silkman, you got a special present from your friend T1. He goes, so where do we put the birthday gifts for Doc? I didn't have time to wrap mine. A personalized autographed frame glamour shot of Shriko Hain with hearts.
Oh God.
Nightmare. This is not a birthday present. Yeah, ex-girlfriend. Yeah. Okay. Danny Brewer fan. Why did they have to wait for the pap smear? Was there nothing in her apartment that had her DNA?
Oh boy.
I answered actually that question for him, if I may. Yep. And I said that they did find, they could have used the toothbrush, the comb or the hairbrush, and also her personal toy. However, that is not a definitive source of her DNA, because technically anybody could be using that, touched it, or really kind of, can I use your toothbrush, which is gross, but people do it all the time. Yeah.
Correct. So essentially, this happens in a lot of murder cases and also in national disasters. They need to get a standard, a DNA standard that's got your name on it, so there's no dispute. With a pap smear, it just so happened, and I researched and read all about this, at that hospital, the Bellin Hospital, they keep the pap smear slides for 5 years. So it was very lucky. The investigators were very lucky. Other hospitals don't keep them for that long. This particular place did. They asked Teresa's mum, Karen, for permission in order to get the pap smear slides, and Tom Fassbender went down. I think it was November the 21st.
That's right.
Yep, where they got the pap smear slides. And so when they prepared genomic DNA, they know that genomic DNA is from Teresa 100%. Neville's correct. You can't go get a toothbrush or a sex toy or whatever, because you don't know whether it's a pure genomic DNA sample from that individual. The last thing you want is a mixed sample. You go, well, that's not good. So you need what's called a DNA standard, right? So say in a crime or whatever like this, and they were looking at all 4 of us, what the investigators will do a buccal swab of each person, get genomic DNA from that individual, and that's a standard. And they use it to either implicate or exculpate. That's it. So once they got the pap smear slides, they're able to get a genomic DNA standard. That is Teresa Horbach. Note, a lot of people go, yeah, but how come they never planted Teresa's DNA in Steve? Because they never had it. They never had it. And they had no idea.
It's a chain of custody issue.
Correct.
Legally.
Correct. And they didn't know whose blood was in the RAV4. So this thing about, well, how come they didn't do that? They couldn't. If there was any type of planting involving Teresa's DNA, they never had it.
Even Culhane said in her report on November 9th, I need a standard to compare this to.
Correct. And I'll remember when Culhane got a cold hit using the database with Gregory Allen, she even said in the report, there's just an investigative lead. We need a sample from Gregory Allen. Same thing with Stephen. When they got the hit, when they searched the criminal database on November the 10th, I think it was, we need a swab. Culhane never disclosed that she already had a swab and had his genomic DNA, Stephen's genomic DNA in the database already, because she had item W, the swab.
Item W.
Swab. Yep. Never disclosed it.
Hopefully that clears that up for Danny.
Yep.
All right, next question.
It's from Ksenia. I was just corrected in Serbian that I said the wrong pronunciation of her name. I called her the American way, Xenia, but it's actually Ksenia. Why? Okay. Yeah, you learn something every day. Actually, there are 12 Serbian people following foul play.
12?
I know of 3.
We rock.
Ksenia, Sila, and myself. I don't know who anybody else is. Yeah.
Welcome.
We represent, yeah. So the question is, why she did it if Brendan said they could not have fire on the 31st because they're fighting Barb and Stephen?
This has been a very controversial area, and Cam made a big deal about, Stephen must be hiding the fact that he had a fire in October. I tell you what, these guys, all of them, get days wrong, times wrong, events run into each other. There are people on night shift. There are people that come and go. They get a lot of things mixed up. So was there a fire? When they asked remember when they asked Bobby Dassey, did you see a fire? No, I didn't note a fire. And then in another report down the track, yeah, there was a fire. So he completely changed his mind. And you've got Brendan and Stephen going, when the hell was this fire on? Right? This is Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is Wisconsin. Fires is no big deal. They're lighting fires all the time. But then again, interesting that was it Redond said that he noted the fire on October 31st, but it was confined in a barrel, not a burn pit. Well, what the hell's going on? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to open my mouth up because usually I get in trouble. But to this day, who here? See, I was gonna ask who believes that there was even a fire on the 31st, but that's for another day.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we'll be here till forever.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Next question comes from Anthony Hills. Do you think Barb suggests pit fire date to Stephen to cover for barrel fire?
I highly doubt it, because remember Robert Fabian was talking about the barrel fire, and Earl apparently was with Robert Fabian. Earl goes, I don't remember it. How can he not remember if they were together? And this on cam. And Earl goes, well, if Robert said it, it must be true. And then there was the story of them both rabbit hunting. They actually went to the pit. They drove down the lane where the rav was meant to be. They said, we never saw it. We were there at the pond. And then the wife, I think, of Robert Fabian goes, oh, no, you got the day wrong. It wasn't Monday, it was Wednesday.
A couple of days later.
Right? And remember on cam, they showed Stephen, his brother Chuck, Earl, and Robert Fabian at the office. Oh, is your girlfriend here to take a photograph? Remember that conversation?
Yes.
And Earl goes, that didn't happen Monday. That happened later. And Stephen goes, are you sure? So these guys don't even know themselves. Right? That's why.
General chit chat, so it doesn't stick.
That's why if you're trying to work out a timeline, it doesn't work. But on convicting a murderer, and also Brenda Schuller, they're shifting timelines. The timelines aren't making sense. That's because they're fucking hopeless at timekeeping and they don't remember the events. Right? If somebody says to you, what did you do 2 weeks ago at 4:00 on a Tuesday? You're going, I don't know. What did I do?
Bloody idea.
Right? Yeah. Correct.
Exactly. Unless it's some major event, you're probably not going to remember the date and time. You're just not.
Correct.
All right. Moving on. From Nan's Life.
Nan's Life 7 is asking, 20 yards is 60 feet. Photos suck. But do you think that pit is 60 feet from the garage?
No.
No, it's close. It's very close.
No. Yeah, maybe 20, 25 feet at most.
Yep. You could sort of work it out because they did a 3D map and they looked at Bear's chain. That's right. And I forgot the actual length of the chain,
15 feet. 15 feet.
Bear was able to go right around it. So the garage and the burn pit were very close.
Actually, as I remember now, it's probably less than 20 feet because his chain or his cable would go up and he could get beside the garage.
Yes.
Not at the back, at the side a little bit, a little ways up.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got that slide somewhere.
It's not a big garage. It just barely fits a car.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question.
It's from Anthony Hills. Did Bear bury the bones?
The suggestion, I could do one better, Anthony. The suggestion was that he ate the bones.
Yeah.
He ate them. That's, yep.
They did believe that, I guess.
They x-rayed it.
Yep.
And he didn't have anything up. Now, allegedly, there was a spoon in a can when they x-rayed it. But the question is, did they use the spoon to scoop up the feces? Right? You think about it. If a dog swallows a spoon, the dog's good as dead, especially if it's a metal spoon. It's not going to go through your GI tract. It's going to tear a hole into it. You're gone.
Yeah.
If that's an emergency surgery operation, you swallow a metal spoon. Think about it. How's a dog going to swallow a metal spoon?
No
Go
way.
through his GI tract. Dog's dead.
Yeah. Beverly, next question's up.
Anthony is from Anthony Hills. How would bear react next to human cremains?
Remember a couple of months ago, we did the podcast series. A German Shepherd has got as many odorant receptors as the tracking dogs.
The bloodhound.
Bloodhounds. They will be able to smell a burning human being. And I dare say that's not something that they normally would smell and probably react crazily, bark, wondering what the hell's going on. You get none of that. None.
Yeah.
In fact, you can see bear in those infamous pictures by Trooper Reese. Bear's right at the burn pit. Right?
I think he would have reacted just like any bloodhound or whatever. I think he would have been all over it.
Yep, thinking, what the hell is this? And bear's calm, bear's passive. Bear is literally standing right on top of the burn pit where there is allegedly a cremated human being right in front of the dog.
Right.
No.
Okay, next question.
Next question is from James Crane. Hi there, Yoga. He says, who would have made the decision not to take pictures of the burn pit?
Jack 61. You want to say?
Start of it.
But
then
also,
and then later Earl was like, you move shit around. I'm not taking photographs back here. You've been moving stuff, man. Come on.
Yep. Earl, his name is Zhang. He's the crime scene photographer. Yep. He's the photographer. He had the photographer with him. Yep. He didn't take any pictures because we don't take pictures when crime scenes have been obviously altered, which begs the question, what the fuck did they do to the burn pit that made Earl, a CSI, go, we're not taking pictures of this stuff. And they're sifting cremains and they don't take any pictures.
The skeptical me, could be convinced, or talked into believing that Zhang did take pictures, but they were, put in file 13 or something like that.
Oh, withheld? Well,
yeah, withheld.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No. I know.
That's probably what happened at Cuss Road.
Yeah, well, we definitely know there are photos that exist from there, but can't get them.
Can't get them.
But I'm really disappointed with Earl from the fact of they could have taken photos from the sifting process because he was part of that.
Yes.
And he failed to have Zhang do that. He was in control from that point forward. So photos could have been taken from that, but they didn't.
It just, that whole event and the day, the doomsday of October 31st, 2005, Mercury must have been in retrograde or some shit, because none of this makes any sense.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
No, it doesn't work.
The comment I was going to make is, if you have a look at the photographs, some of the stuff that they photograph is like blades of grass, toys, light switches,
dog poop.
Hair, dog poop. You're thinking
statues,
and you're thinking they took thousands. There must have been thousands of pictures. Are you trying to tell me
7,300 plus?
Yeah, are you trying to tell me that at a burn pit, a crime scene, where the suspect's house is literally feet away, and you suspect, Jesus, these look like human bones, and there's a missing girl, you go, don't worry about it. We're not going to take any pictures. Are you kidding? They didn't even call a coroner or a forensic anthropologist. Nope. Fassbender and Wiegert didn't even roll up.
Oh, come on. It was a long weekend or something.
Cuss Road.
Yeah.
Human cremain or bones or whatever allegedly found by Sipple on the 9th.
Not even Pagel showed up.
They didn't call a photographer in. They didn't call a coroner in. I just need more bodies out here to pick this shit up, guys. Come on, help me out. What? What? Yeah. And people wonder why we question this stuff. All right, moving on.
Next question is from Anthony Hills. How many searches of the Dassey garage, and was any items taken by law enforcement?
No. I did a walkthrough. That's it.
I think they were in there. I think they were in there 4 or 5 times. Isn't that right, Doc? That sounds about right.
In the Dassey garage?
No. Oh, the Dassey garage. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
They just did a walkthrough.
No, they did a walkthrough. They didn't collect anything, as far as I know.
No. Didn't test blood. Nothing.
No.
Yeah, you think about it, right? There's all the instrument. I'm not saying Bobby did anything, right? Please. There's all the instruments to cut up a human being on the ground. They've got a deer cut up and basically skinned on a stand. Right?
I don't understand why the deer tag photo was taken. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I can't work that out.
You will go on for another 100 years with that.
I can't work it out. It's just great.
Yeah. It's really bizarre, right? Because in Stephen's garage, they're looking for blood. And I can't find any except for Stephen. In the Dassey garage, there's blood everywhere, including a saw used to.
He didn't even have to borrow a saw from his neighbor, the homicidal uncle.
Yep. No, nothing. No testing, nothing.
Nothing. And they didn't take anything, as far as I know.
Not as far as I'm aware.
Alrighty. Sorry, Anthony. Nothing there. Next question.
James Crane. So who was narrowing the investigation, making sure it stayed on course?
Well, that had to come from the prosecutors, in my opinion, Doc.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about Hagel?
Well, yeah, all of them.
Hand in hand. Yeah.
Yep, they had. I remember reading. Kratz was saying that they have daily meetings. They work out strategies. Yep, and plus they're getting tips. Remember, they're getting tips, right? That's why they started at Stephen's place, because they're getting all this intelligence and tips. So the focus, get out of your mind. The focus was on Stephen and only on Stephen until Brendan hooked himself in.
Yes.
The focus was on Stephen from day one.
I agree.
Yep.
All righty. Next question.
And there's actually a comment before we move on from Corey Zipper. He says, only law enforcement had the motive and the ability to control the media and crime lab in Madison.
Yes.
And they also had the MMO, means what do you call it? Motivation and opportunity. They totally did. And even in one of the court's replies, they said the same thing.
Yes. Well, that was a joke. That was a joke, right? If you read and we've read them, the responses to Zellner, they're going, Bobby Dassey couldn't have had the skill to do all this, but we know someone who could have, and they were alluding to law enforcement.
Law enforcement.
Yep. Correct. But if Kathleen Zellner came in, said, I blame the cops for all this, it would have been thrown in the bin. Correct. And I think in Godsey's book, I think it's in that one. We must read it. It's called Noble Cause Corruption. Noble Cause Corruption.
Yes.
In which the police don't think they're doing anything wrong, and they plant evidence to get a conviction.
They believe the guy's guilty. We're just going to help you out.
And they have no issues with it at all. Noble Cause Corruption. He's got a whole chapter in it. We need to read it after we do the Brendan Dassey. It's very interesting.
It is.
Yep.
All right. You got the next question up, Nervely, from Pete Moss?
Sure. Pete Moss. If the photo is the 6th and the tire wires were moved by Sturdivant, then the pit had been disturbed before the bones were discovered.
We know that he definitely after the 6, used the rake and took out the tire wire, because you can see the tire wire has been moved from the pit to the seat, but that's on November the 8th. So how did Erdl notice that a burn pit had the wire inside, and when he came along, now the tire wire had been moved outside, and he goes, shit, this has been disturbed. There's something going on here. Now, the question is this, right? You know that Trooper Reese was right next to the burn pit. He was right there. You can see his shadow. He was within feet. He didn't notice any smell. What were the investigators asking Brendan constantly? Do you smell anything? Do you smell anything? They're not stupid. Yep. They know that a burning body produces odorants, pungent odorants.
That's my trigger, but I'm going to refrain.
Yep. Okay. Brendan goes, no, but then he changed later on when they said, oh, you must have smelled something, right? So the investigators who saw the cremains, saw the burn pit on the 8th, said, I saw a pile of bones on the top. I also saw cranial bone fragments entwined in the wire mesh. Well, Trooper Reese is right there. You can see a picture of the wire mesh as well, right? They then asked, not Sturtevant, Pevito. They said, describe me how you saw these cremains in the tire wire. Oh, they were enmeshed, embedded in there. And you can see that some stuff was stuck. That's not bone, right? That's probably insulation, right? That's material that's melted. Bone doesn't do that, right?
No.
Because if you look at the picture, right, of the cranial bone fragments, they're flat. They're not amorphic. They're like a skull that's been crushed. Pevito was asked by Fallon, can you tell how those fragments got there? He goes, no. And one of the questions was, if someone got a bucket and just tipped them, can you tell me that didn't occur? And he goes, no. So Pevito, who's a fire guy, could not tell how those fragments got entwined or enmeshed in the tire wire.
And if they really thought it was bone, why the hell didn't they test it?
They left it there.
They left it there.
They left it there. They came back on the 10th. They left the bone fragments there. They probably collected some, but the others, they left the tire wire, a bundle there, and they collected on the 10th.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And no pictures. No pictures on the 8th.
No. And we only have one photo from Cam of the 10th. One.
Correct.
Which suggests there's many more, but that's for another day. All right, moving on.
Next question. Anthony Hills, was Redon pressured to change dates on the burn barrel fire?
Not the date, but the size of the fire.
Yep.
The size of the fire.
Yep.
He obviously said, you want me to make it bigger? Is that what you want? Yeah. And the interesting that Redon said that it was contained to a 55 gallon, I think 55 gallon burn barrel. Not a burn pit, but a burn barrel, which is interesting. Okay. And he couldn't have seen Stephen's burn barrel because we looked at the point of view. The Redon couldn't have seen that. So where the hell is this fire coming from?
Okay, I got a message here. Lisa, I'll try to do that if I can get it on screen. Lisa, in the live chat, sent me a private message. She wanted me to show it to Neverly, so I'll try to do that.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Next question.
It's from
about done.
Okay, Danny Brewer fan. Can a youth waive a parental witness or lawyer, or does the parent have to waive?
No. I think Brendan. I think Brendan can
say
the
age.
He could say no. if you if you read the CASO reports, they asked Barb, would you like to attend the interview? And Barb goes, no. And Brendan goes, oh, I don't need my mum there. But Barb is denying that they asked her. Barb said, they never asked me.
Or
Right?
as manipulative as skilled in that department they are, deceptive, they could have said, hey, we're just going to ask you a couple of questions. You don't have to be here if you don't want to. Like, don't inconvenience yourself. I could see
Right.
that too. Speculation, of course.
Yep.
No, but
Okay.
I think Brendan just basically said, no, I'll talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Didn't they
Because
say at
he's got
one
nothing
point?
to hide.
Didn't they say at one point that, or maybe Barb said, I don't know, that they warned her that she didn't want to be there? Because it
I
was
think
gonna
they
be-
no. I think they did it in one of the interviews or prior to. You don't. I think it'd be better if you just sat out. I guess what Barb said.
Yep. Don't worry. We'll go through the CASO reports. What they said.
Yep.
Yeah, we got it all.
Okay. Last question.
Nice.
What bones were taken from the deer camp barrel?
Oh
That's
God.
by Anthony Hills.
Well,
I don't remember.
Officially, they're animal bones. But what the hell is a dog doing a hit there? What the hell is Loof showing a lot of interest? And I think Brutus did an alert there as well. The dogs spent time at the deer camp. They went around it. They went around the trailers. But interestingly, the investigators asked Redon if they could check the trailers, and they said they found nothing. But there's something weird about that burn barrel. I tried.
If there was just animal bones, you brought up a good point. Why did they put a guard on it? And they did.
Yes. I tried to investigate the burn barrels. I gave up. It's impossible to follow.
Yeah. If you follow
Impossible.
the chain of custody, the chain of custody documents, forget it.
Yeah, and plus Kratz, I think, demanded one of the burn barrels be returned.
Yep.
Burn barrel number 4, I think it was.
That's right.
There's some weird stuff going on about the burn barrels, and hopefully, Duke said he's going to potentially do a future podcast looking at the burn barrels. The burn barrels are very, very interesting. Yeah, definitely.
So
there's something going on with the burn barrels.
So we probably should look at getting him a therapist now on retainer. I'm just saying.
Yep.
And I'm gonna pop this up and a big thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome.
That's really nice.
Yep.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty. Let me see if I can pull this over here. Lisa, did you want me to show this on screen? I'm not sure if you want me to show this privately or on screen. If Lisa's still here, I don't want to show something.
Yeah, she's here.
I'm not going to put it on screen if she just meant to show you privately.
Okay. Yeah, probably just show it privately then.
She goes, yes, it's okay to show.
Okay.
All right. Let me pop this one off. And then let's see if
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. All right, let's try this. There you go. She says, oh my goodness, on our way to Manitowoc, about 13 miles till our destination, 2 sheriff's cars were parked on the side roads as if waiting for us to come by. Just this week, I put my Free Steven and Brendan decal on my car. After passing these cars, they both pulled out behind us. One turned off about 3 miles onto another road. The other followed us for 6 miles. Needless to say, Wendy Joe Richardson, the GOT drove the exact speed limit. We were very relieved when the second car turned off. Interesting.
Yep. Yep. Sounds like intimidation to
to
me.
the salvage yard.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And she says it was super scary. And
Yeah.
I believe you. And again, like we discussed this many, many moons ago when we all, got onto this case, that these are generational cops in a rural place, in whether it's Wisconsin or any other state. They're used to dealing with their to protect and serve the way they have been from generation to a generation to a generation. And it's like a mob mentality, right? They can do whatever they want. Now, with this case of making a murderer and Laura and Moira, what they did, they opened up a door into the shenanigans that were going on for ages. And
Yes.
they would have continued to do whatever they were doing with Peterson, Kuchurik, and the generations before if this didn't happen. The minute this became public, kind of, all of it changed because now it's under the scrutiny. Plus, it's not just this show, but it's also the knowledge of the followers of this case, the media, the social network. It's all kind of zooming in to this. So I could see how they could get frustrated because things have changed for them. Nothing's the same anymore.
No. It basically put the spotlight, and this was never meant to happen.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like, it's almost like the Kennedy assassination. It just became a household word. And that's what Ma'am did. It made this case a household name. Stephen, Brendan, and what we're doing, and other YouTubers over many, many years, Irakosi, many others, putting the spotlight, and they don't want that attention.
And
They
Kratz
want this to
fought.
disappear.
Yes,
Correct.
Kratz fought for all of this to be shut down, the production of Making a
Yes.
Murderer. He did.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So we're done?
We're done.
Well, look, guys, thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you so much for all your participation. We do this for you guys. We do this for knowledge, for education, but also to seek justice in this case here. And that's why we want to bring Brendan Dassey's story to you. And guys, we hope that you walk in his shoes to realize what it was like. Thank you so much. And we'll just quickly go down the panel. Tell us how you're coming along. Jack 61, how about you, good sir?
I'm doing very well. Planning on going back into the queso dispatch calls tomorrow. I think we have a pretty, well, we'll see where we get. We still have quite a bit left where we left off last week. Should get some interesting calls on November 9th. Well, we'll get more into that. Other than that, I'm still in. Well, this is a kind of a waiting game right now with the DOJ to see if they're going to relinquish requests. One of them is approaching 2 years old. Others from I've got at least one or two others that are a year old. So we'll see what happens here. If something doesn't happen soon, then we'll see what happens next with the lawyer that I'm talking to.
Awesome.
I don't, I don't want to take action against these people. I don't want any money from them. That's not at all. I just want the records that I've requested. That's all. So, other than that, wonderful presentation, Doc. Neverly, fantastic job as always. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next we have, I don't recall. How are you coming along?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the interesting, informative, infuriating, all of the above presentation. And I believe Rhonda does plan to have a podcast about Daniel's case again on Thursday night, 5 Central. So hope to see y'all there.
Awesome. Thank you so much there. I don't recall. And finally, Neverly. Neverly, how are you coming along?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Dr. Silkman, Jack, and Cherie for all your support. And everybody in the chat, I think we have the best chatters. And it's really comforting to know that we'll always have your support. So that's awesome. Thank you for doing that for over the years. Yeah, other than that, all is well in Beverly Hills.
Awesome.
How are you
Awesome.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Like I said, with you, I'm spending a lot of time on this case. It's amazing. You think you know everything, but you don't. There's just so much more to gather and learn. And again, we're going to be presenting it to you. We're not sugarcoating anything. Next week, we're going to be looking at the initial interrogations. Just take a snapshot of those. And then we're going to go full into the March 1st interrogation. We're going to read it out line by line. We're going to analyze it and take it from there. It's a shit show, really, what happened to Brendan, and people need to know about it. But look, guys, again, thank you so much for your support. If you enjoy what we do, please consider subscribing, putting your DNA in the thumbs up button. Turn on the notification bell if you want to get all the latest podcasts that we do. And again, guys, thank you so much for your support and your well wishes on my birthday yesterday. And guys, we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Don't worry, Mr. President. I'm not going to give up. They want me to, but I won't. I will not stop. And with that said, I'm going to say this has been a Foul Play production.